Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from Jerusalem to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. Shalom and welcome to the podcast from the Biblical Heartland. This is the Israel Podcast, and I'm so glad to be with you wherever you are. You are certainly in my life, and I want to be part of yours. And we have a great show for you, a long show. And because it's a long show, some of my listeners have requested that I add in times into the texts. So if you look down at the text, you'll see where the times begin of the different segments. And we have three great segments for you today. We have first Rav Mike Feuer about Torah portion of Ki Tisa. That's the golden calf. That's the breaking of the Ten Commandments. And that's the closeness between God and Moses. And Moses, in the end, his face is glowing. It's an amazing Torah portion, one of the most dramatic ones. And another dramatic aspect is that I actually came to the Pardes Institute and we sat together, me and Mike Feuer, Rav Mike, and recorded. So that was a lot of fun, something that hasn't happened in a long time, so it was very special. So stay tuned for that coming up right now next. And then later on in the show, we have Simcha Rothman, an advocate, a lawyer who started an organization to fight for separation of powers in Israel. He's running for Knesset in the Religious Zionist Party. I did a Meet the Candidate interview with him, so that's a lot of fun. We're going to finish it off with Matt Mausner, who's an author and a thinker and a historian, and a podcaster himself, on the topic of China. He just came back from China. What does China have in store for the world? And certainly, what does it have in store for Israel? And I guess, what do we have in store for it? So it's a great show. I'm so glad you're with me. Stay tuned. Right now, we're going to begin with Rabbi Mike Feuer. Rav Mike, take it away. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from Jerusalem to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. Shalom to all of you around the world, and shalom to Rav Mike Feuer, who joins me, or I join him, here at the Pardes Institute in the same room.
We join together. Let's just call it that.
Okay, we are joined together, and I'm excited. And I do want to hear from everybody out there on either Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube how it's sounding. I'm seeing all kinds of people from all over the world, including Simone, who says shalom from Johannesburg, from Joburg. Shalom, Simone. God bless you, and thanks so much for joining us. And also, your friend, not so far away, Levi Felix, says hello from Durban. I hope you guys know one another, because you guys are both on the show virtually. And it's how far is it from Durban to Joburg?
I have no idea.
I have no idea, but
why are you asking me?
It's the same country, am I right, though, friends? That's
yes,
right.
Yes, you are correct. It is the same country.
Okay, good. So I'm very excited to be here in the flesh. I'm feeling very sensory. Like the sun and the music and the scents and the things and the people.
Fleshly Israel.
That's right. There was this like young lady outside who was very pregnant and wearing a very tight kind of shirt, and like it was like, I am pregnant.
I am spring.
That's right. That's what it was like. I was like,
excuse me, my goddess roll is waiting.
That's right. And my parking, I had to park in like, and where I usually park, it's just usually flat ground, but there's these like weeds, and they're big, and they're making me feel allergic.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, let's not talk about the fact that the eyes have already started to itch for the next 3 months.
That's right. Josh Wander says, my good friend Josh says, your sound is good, but Mike's levels are drop high. Well, that's okay, because I can fix that.
Leveling.
Use this little button, and I can add a little reverb so we can sound like we're reverberating. All right, so we're having a lot of fun here, and thanks to Josh Fleischer for hooking me up.
Let's get down to work here.
We have a Torah portion coming up this Shabbat, which is, in my opinion, the mother lode, the big one. Okay, and I think a lot of people will agree with me. And you said to me before the show, I say that about a lot of Torah portions, but like this is in many ways the big one. This is the big one.
Why do you say so?
Because this is the almost rejection of the Jewish people by God, and then the turnout of it, the reverse of it, which is that God accepts forgiveness, accepts Moses' plea for forgiveness, and then actually turns Moses into a higher level person.
Yeah, it's a complete reworking of the relationship, which is really always true when there's a breakdown and reunion, but we'll get to it when we get into the details here.
All right, so the beginnings of the Torah portion actually is two long sections, which are seemingly belonging to a different part of the Torah portion and different Torah portion, which is the end of the vessels and vestments. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay, so what are the first vessels that are talked about in Ki Tisa?
Well, I mean, first we start out with
Machzit
shekel,
right?
This idea that you don't count Jews. Jews count, but you don't count Jews,
right?
That God tells Moshe to take a census, and that it's going to be done through everyone contributing a half shekel. It's a powerful parsha. We actually read it a few weeks ago as one of the Arba Parshiyot, the sort of structure, liturgical structure that leads up to Pesach. Around the corner, by the way, we could have our first Pesach discussion of anxiety later if you want.
That's right.
But, the power of Machatzita Shekel is not just in the fact that it's a census. And it's not just in the fact that the beauty of the half shekel, right, as opposed to the whole shekel, meaning there's an intrinsic partnership in this final stage of building the Mishkan. But what has always spoken to me is that the silver used here is devoted to the Adanim, to the sockets which serve as the base that holds up the entire tabernacle, Mishkan, right?
And holds the
boards together.
The boards together, right?
So there's a sense that the ultimate equality of all Jews needs to be the basis of any structure of divine worship. Mm-hmm. Right? That's kind of like a fundamental message here, and it's one which can be very challenging, particularly in our day.
You're talking about a whole line of talking and thinking in Judaism, which is called Ahavat Yisrael, right? Like Ahavat Yisrael, and there's been Jews who are famous for it, like the Ohev Yisrael. There are
Balasali.
Right. There are people who have taken that mitzvah of the love of the fellow Jewish people as a central mitzvah, and of course there's a Hasidic additive. I think it's a Hasidic or it might be even Sephardi additive, which is that the first thing you basically say in prayer is that I accept upon myself the mitzvah of loving.
It's from Shar Kavanot to the Arizal.
The Arizal, that's right.
So it doesn't belong to anybody; it belongs to all of us.
Okay, that's right. Well, Arizal folks, not everybody's an Arizal folks, but
if you keep the halacha, you are.
I have to admit that I'm not sure that I've taken upon myself that mitzvah in the fullest way possible.
What do you mean?
I think that I've focused on Eretz Yisrael, and I focused on the Shekhinah returning to Zion, and all these things that my life has caused me to focus on. But the focus of Ahavat Yisrael, I'm not sure that I have made that into a like. Sure, it's something you kind of verbalize,
principle.
but like a first principle.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my work here at Pardes has opened me to both new horizons of the depth of the mitzvah and also the challenges. I mean, listen, in light of the recent Supreme Court decision to recognize, reform and conservative conversions
here, that are happening here in Israel.
Right, because they were always recognized for purposes of Aliyah.
Right.
Right. It adds a new layer of challenge. What do I mean? Is that Ahavat Yisrael is challenging enough. When we start having a debate about who is within the boundary of Yisrael, then it becomes even more complex, right? And
wasn't this fight fought? And I would have loved to. Like I was like yesterday, I was like, which Chabadnik can I call to hear? Or maybe my friend Josh Wander. He's probably great at this. But who's going to talk to me about the whole fight of Mihu Yehudi, which was a big like Lubavitcher Rebbe fight with the state of Israel about like who is considered a Jew.
I mean, it's been an ongoing battle. The state sort of gave it a supercharge, but I mean, it's been an ongoing battle arguably since the time of the Maccabees. I mean, this idea that we are a people, on one hand, in a sort of an ethnic nation bounded by genetics and familial ties. On the other hand, right, at Sinai, we all converted, right? Because really, Israel is a consciousness. Now it's a consciousness within a covenantal vessel, meaning you have to commit, you're bound by it. But that makes a mess. I mean, I can tell you, like, I've seen very painful circumstances here. Some of my students who deeply identify as Jews, deeply, like really, not shallowly. I'm talking about deeply identify as Jews, but are not halachically Jewish. But within the communities in which they live, they are accepted as Jews.
Right.
But they want to be accepted by all Jews. But then they discovered that in order to do so, they actually have to live a different type of Judaism than the one that they identify with.
Right.
Right. This is a messy.
Because there's a big difference between Judaism and another religion, which I call my Judaism.
Yeah, well,
I call it my Judaism, which is like the Judaism that I define.
Right.
And that's not necessarily traditional Judaism, but
Well, but you got to make it even worse, which is that, and then you'll have people who are actually born Jewish. So like from a halachic standpoint, there's no questions, but they don't practice. So what do you do with someone who's like in because they like qualified but could care less about what they've got, and someone who actually cares a lot about what they've got but don't qualify from the halachic? It is just it's a mess of our reality.
I just want you to know that last night I recorded, and anybody watching on Facebook can scroll down and see my recording with advocate Simcha Rothman, who's running for the Knesset, and he's the founder of the Meshilut movement. We talked a lot about yesterday about the conversion issue and the problematic court decision. But on the other hand, one thing that I didn't get a chance to say yesterday is I am all against this court decision, totally against it. But at the same time, I put some of the blame on the Orthodox Jewry, which has made conversion here in Israel complex, hard to follow and understand, hard, and basically chaotic. And so it has not been a welcoming process in a decent sense. You know, it hasn't been a decent process.
I mean, just from the legal standpoint, the Supreme Court made it clear that if the government had passed any sort of law, then the court would uphold it. But in absence of such a law, so the court will do what it feels is right, which is always the problem with the court. But
right, even that formulation is like that. What you just said now is almost like a wild thing. It's like, oh, you haven't made a law? Well, so the court, will make a law. It's like, that's not your job. That's not your job. It's like,
that ship sailed a long time ago.
Right, exactly. Okay, we go on to the laver, right?
Laver.
Let's
vote.
Yeah, if anybody has a
resolution,
I heard it been said as laver.
I mean, it would make sense. Laver. I just wanted to be difficult.
Okay, that's okay. And this laver is made out of copper. One of the ways that it's made is that the women brought their copper mirrors that they used to beautify themselves in Egypt in order to attract their husbands, and therefore cause the Jewish people to continue to move forward, to continue to procreate. At first, Moses rejected these mirrors. He was like, that comes from a place of that's a little
Tava.
That's a desirous place. It's not a spiritual place.
It's not holy.
And then God was like, no, man, it's very holy. There's nothing holier. There is nothing holier, and these mirrors are going to be the very way that the priests are going to purify themselves. Okay, this is the essence of holiness. It's actually a way that is exactly what I created the world for, and that's what I created the temple sacrifices for. Which is I'm going to take this worldly stuff like animal sacrifice and turn that into spirituality. Like these people made the Jewish people, these women fought for life, l'chaim. Okay, and that's the way they did it. And this is, in fact, the greatest gift. It's the most beautiful gift. And I love the fact, and this is such Judaism, which is like, oh, Moses, you missed it. And there's a few times like that, having to do specifically also with the tabernacle, where Moses, like, he says this, he comes down like this, and somebody else, God or Betzalel, will be like, no, it's like this, okay? And Moses, that's a very human character.
And the cure, I don't think I can say laver with a straight face. See, I'm laughing now. Right? It represents, in that sense, that these sort of mirrors, which on one hand have to do with desire and actually become one of the gateways to purity and holiness, really embody one of the most important principles of Torah, which is that, there's always a discourse of values within halakha, within Jewish law. And here the two values are, I would say, the poles of natural desire and holiness. Mm-hmm. And that I think oftentimes, particularly in religious thought, they're seen to be mutually exclusive. You can have one, but you can't have the other. But here what we see actually is the Torah is an embodied practice. You can take desire and you can make it holy. You don't have to have one or the other. And in that sense, it represents, therefore, the gateway to an intimate relationship with God. Because what happens is, in order for the Kohen to go in to the holy sanctity of the tabernacle, he has to wash hands and feet with this place, almost as a reminder. Like, don't get too abstract. Don't think that this is detached from the world, that the tabernacle itself is actually a microcosm, and the way you act there is the way in which you're meant to act in the world.
The other thing that we learn about is the ketoret, right? Which is the
incense.
Well, actually, we learn about I get a little confused about this. The anointing oil. Now, is that made of the same stuff as a ketoret, or
it's some of the same ingredients, but certainly not the same recipe.
Right. So you're allowed to make this anointing oil, but you're definitely not allowed to make it outside of the temple service. Like, don't use it.
This was a one-time show. The Shevet Mishcha, the anointing oil, was only made once. As opposed to the ketoret, which was made every year. Right, it was only made once. It was hidden away at a certain point, and there are all kinds of sort of remuzim, like hints of promises that it will be rediscovered at a certain point.
The anointing oil.
That would
the
be a
anointing
big one.
oil. That's cool.
That would be like,
and
that's next Indiana Jones 5.
And everything gets rubbed down by this anointing oil.
Not rubbed down, it's sprinkled.
Sprinkled.
We're going to be parsimonious with the oil here.
Okay, not to overuse it.
Yeah,
not like silver polish.
Polishing your car.
Okay, but still though, like everything gets that oil. Why is that important? Why do these works of gold and metal and wood need a pinch, dash?
Well, Rashi says it's a process of chinuch. And we know in modern Hebrew we use chinuch to mean education. But really, he is convinced that what chinuch means is to bring something into the service for which it's been made.
Right. Right. The Hebrew modern word is lachnoch.
Lachnoch, right.
Which means to
inaugurate. Or
In other traditions, not ours, you would say christen.
But that's deliberate because Christ means anointed.
Anointing, that's right. It means limshoch. That's right. Exactly right.
It comes from the exact same
and that's what
language.
Mashiach means.
Mashiach comes.
Right. Mashiach does not mean savior.
It means the anointed.
The anointed.
And it's important to remember that the two anointed...
And anointed in a literal sense. Anoint
and
the oil.
In a literal sense, the two functionaries, figures, leadership models who are anointed in Jewish tradition are the king and the high priest.
That's right. And in fact, we see here the anointing of, in this case, Aaron and his sons as his first-time deal. And they get anointed, and you're not allowed to make this you're not allowed to try to make this oil. It says...
Don't try this at home.
Uve matkunato lo ta'asu. Do not try to make its recipe. Okay, and
like I said, don't try this at home.
That's right. And anybody who does try,
you're going down
the kibosh. Okay. Now one of the and then we also have the ketoret, right? We have the incense, and that's it. The incense is basically the last, and when you put that incense on those coals, it makes that smoke. That hidden cloud that appears there, that's where God kind of appears to. He can't be seen fully. You're not gonna witness him fully. And we're gonna deal with that a lot here, which is God's like, I will show you a lot. I will show you a lot, but I can't show you everything. Either I can't show you everything because you're not on the worthy level as a human being, or if I show you everything, your outsideness, otherness to God kind of dissipates and disappears, and therefore we end creation at that moment. And so a person cannot see me, and this world cannot see me, therefore. And that's kind of the answer to the invisibility question with God, which is, why are you invisible, okay? And basically, I'm actually visible in everything, but if you saw the full me, the real me, it would be game over.
It's something I have to speak about a lot with my students here is the fact that on one level, everything we say about God is projection. Because we're speaking to the infinite. So any limitation that we put down is a reflective of the limits of our understanding. At the same time, that's the only thing that allows God to be graspable. But this is the terrible sort of like forced play of having a relationship with the infinite. You must reduce God to the comprehensible in order to have a relationship. But you just must never forget that what you've done is reduce God.
Right.
Because the alternative is idolatry, as we're going to see further on in the parsha.
Okay, and then we get, now that we've gotten all the blueprints for how to, we need a dude. We need a man. We need somebody to do. We need the guy. We need the guy who's going to do it. I know a guy. And that guy.
That's basically what God says.
Right. And that guy, now for me, this is very important because to me, this is another part of the Kalev ben Yefuneh story. Hidden in all this.
Secretly.
Which, that's right. So there's another layer of the Kalev ben Yefuneh story. And the Torah tells us, I think we talked about it a few years ago, Re'eh, look. Karati b'shem Betzalel ben Uri ben Chur leMatei Yehuda. Look, I have called upon the name of Betzalel, the son of Uri, the son of Chur, to the tribe of Judah. Now this, we don't know who Uri is, and some people even posit that that's not actually a person, but like a...
Ben Uri, my enlightened.
Yeah, enlightened. But Chur is in this week's Parsha as a totally hidden character, and he is, it's sad to say, it's heartbreaking to say, he is the murdered one.
Yes.
He is the one. He's the korban. He is the offering, but not in a nice way. He's going to be out there in front of the Jewish people, trying to block them from doing the sin of the golden calf, which is what this Torah portion is really about, the central part of the story. And some people, some elements of Jewish society, murders him as he says, "Stop! Don't do this. This is wrong." Now he was left down with Aaron. To kind of minister onto the people as Moses goes up to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. And when Moses is delayed, we'll get to it in a second, the Jewish people are going to come on to Aaron and Hur. They're going to say, make us a representation of God in some way. Give us an idolatry that we can worship. And he's going to say, no, don't do it. They're going to kill him.
Don't go there.
Don't go there. Now here God says, right before he tells us that story, he says, check this out. I've called on Bezalel, who's the son of Uri, the son of Hur, to build all of these vestments. Like, I did not forget my man Hur. Like, his grandson is going to be the one that's going to do the tikkun. He's going to do the exact opposite of this thing. So for me, when I see this verse, this verse is the greatest verse that talks to me about blah 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 of souls. What's it called? Gilgul, yeah. Transmigration of souls, right? It's like Hashem is like, you see, I saw somebody get murdered on Kiddush Hashem. I did not forget.
I think it's important to point out to people that you're speaking from the place that the chronology in which this is presented is not reflective of the way in which it happened.
Right, that's right.
Because, of course, we've already gotten the full description of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle at this point, and we're about to get to the discussion of the sin of the golden calf, where Hur meets his unfortunate end. But it's presented in the opposite.
That's because our rabbis teach us that God oftentimes gives us refuah before the makah.
It's also true.
He gives us healing before the strike. In any case, he and Ahaliav. I love Ahaliav.
It's a great name.
Great name. Not a lot of people named Ahaliav. You don't meet too many.
But the shul that Sulam Yaakov was once resident in was called Oholiav.
Wow.
So yeah, I always saw that.
That is some holy love from Oholiav.
They're holy people.
Ahaliav ben Achisamach from the tribe of Dan. Together, they're going to create all of the vessels and vestments.
I have to say one thing about who Bezalel is, because there are some very important lines here for understanding the role that consciousness plays in creation. Right? Because if you look at how it's described what he does, it says Emaleo ruach Elohim, right? I've filled him with this divine spirit, right? And wisdom and understanding and knowledge, right? Lachshov machshavot. He has this ability to think, conceptualize, and to do. Right? And when we speak about the Mishkan, as we do elsewhere, as a microcosm of creation, when you think about that God speaks the world into being, that there was some inner divine conception that found its expression through speech and then took form. Well, we don't have that ability as human beings. But what we have an ability is what's called malechet machshevet. Right? That, like, truly thoughtful.
I think there's a street like that, like right around the corner.
It might be right around the corner, right?
Yeah.
But it's also, of course, what defines forbidden work on Shabbat, because it's the true capacity of the human being to conceive and to take conscious action to create a world which reflects our conception. And so, therefore, Bezalel represents, to a certain degree, one of the heights that humanity can reach. Something which, unlike Moshe, who kind of, in theory, we could all get there, but let's face it, certainly by the end of this parsha, I don't think any of us really have real aspirations. But Bezalel actually represents something which we can all do, which is this idea of malechet machshevet. Everyone really needs to find that place within themselves where there's a conception which is so powerful within them that they're driven to develop the craftsmanship to be able to make it real in the world. Mm-hmm. I'm very moved by the character Bezalel. My father's name was Bezalel Shalom, and I have a child, Yosef Bezalel. We call him Tzali. So an important personality in my life.
Yeah, and just that name later on, not in this parsha. I think next week's parsha we're going to learn Bezalel, Betzel El Haita. You were in the shadow of God. You had a vision of God, a premonition of God, an understanding.
He was in the background when God was talking to Moshe.
Right, he really understood, and that Bezalel is part of the Kalev story, the Hur Kalev story.
To be continued.
Okay. Okay. Fine. All good, right? So far, so good, right? So far, so good. The Torah portion is going along just swimmingly. And now we're going to get to the height of human aspiration. We're going to get to the big one. And the big one is Moses is going to go up to Sinai and receive the Torah. That is... if you look up the word awesome, that's the picture that it has, which is the awesomest thing is a human being reaching the heights.
It doesn't get bigger than this.
Right. It's meeting the Godhead eyeball to eyeball and receiving
Sistine Chapel.
Haven't been there yet, by the way.
You know the picture I'm talking about.
You're talking
figure,
about, it's like that. It's exactly right. So, right. Not that we're Sistine Chapel folks, just making sure you know that. Okay, but just respect. It's funny you say that. Because just today, I was thinking about how from this week's... Well, I was thinking actually about Michelangelo.
Oh.
And I was thinking about his Moses with the horns.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there is no way that he could have understood the text that it says that the Quran or Pnei or Moshe, whatever, we'll get there in a second, that Moses' skin glowed. There's no way that he could have come up with, and that means horns on his head like a devil. There's no way.
You mean as a shot reading?
Yeah.
But he didn't have the Hebrew text, likely.
What text could he have possibly had that would have said he had horns on top of his head?
Vulgate.
Right.
You'd have to look at the Latin translation.
Well,
I don't know what it says there.
You know what? I haven't seen the Vulgate, and I can ask my friend Eric to look for me or something. But
I'm sure he has seen it.
Yeah. But like, if that's what it says, then that is dumb. And I don't think it says that because I don't think it's dumb.
Let's face it. It's unlikely that it's dumb. It's more likely that it's evil.
Okay. I can live with that. I can buy that. But I cannot buy that somebody was like, the skin of his face glowed means that it was horns on top of his head. Because it says face.
Yeah.
And it says skin. So,
but you've been influenced by an entire generation of skin cream commercials that talk about their face glowing.
Oh, that's right. And in fact, we do have one of the sponsors of the show, which is Salves of Jerusalem.
Oh.
And you can get your Moses
it'll make your face glow, but won't give you horns.
That's right. That's right. So that's salvesofjerusalem.com. If you type in coupon code Yishai, you'll get 10% off. And that's our good friends, Simcha and Rachel. They make great creams for you.
And if you're lucky, you become a unicorn.
That's right. And we say, mind the myrrh. That's what we say.
Mind the myrrh.
As in, don't mind the myrrh, as in mind the myrrh.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, things are going around just swimmingly, aren't they? And
all's well that ends well.
And it says Vayiten. Here we go. We're in Book of Shemot, chapter 31, verse 18. Torah portion of Ki Tisa. V'yiten el Moshe kechalato ledaber ito be'ar Sinai shnei luchot ha'edut. When God finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him the 2 tablets
of testimony.
Luchot Evan, they're made of stone. Ketuvim be'etzba Elohim. They're written in the finger of God. That's right. Okay, wait. So that to me is pinnacle moment right there. That verse is like pinnacle moment. Because the reason I say this is because there are other places in the Torah where you have pinnacle moment followed by the next verse, a fall, a quote unquote fall from grace. Okay, especially at the Garden of Eden where you have like they are naked together, which is actually meant to be like simple beauty, like they're together with God and everything is wholesome and whole. The next word is v'hanachash, and in this case, it's
you understand the connection between these 2 verses.
Go ahead.
Well, they both have the word boshesh.
That's right. And there's a third one. We can't get into it now. Okay, we can't get into it. That's right. And they're all 3 fall from grace. The third boshesh, can't get into it now, is about the Jewish people about to enter the land of Israel.
Oh.
And Amalek hitting. Okay, just very quickly. In this case, in the first case, it's the snake.
In the second, the snake.
The first, what?
It's easy to blame the snake.
Yeah, the first one's the snake. The second one here, who is it? Rashi tells us. Who is it that's going to fool the Jewish people to believing that Moses is dead?
The Satan.
The Satan, or the proverbial accuser. Okay, and he shows him a dead bed.
Right.
He shows him the
death
bed.
Moshe dead in the sky. Right.
That's a bummer.
Oh, bad
That's going to be a bummer for
scary.
you. Yeah, that's going to be
scary. Yeah.
That's going to be
empathy here. Yeah,
right.
Sure.
And then in the third one, it's Amalek. The third striker when the Jewish people are about to enter the land of Israel is Amalek. So these 3 forces, the snake, the accuser, Amalek, they're part of the same type of thing to help stop a person or the humanity from reaching its pinnacle. In this case, Vayar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe laredet min ha'ar. The nation saw that Moses was late or tarrying, which is different than late.
Yeah.
Okay, I am often late to our meetings.
But you never tarry.
I'm not trying to tarry. I'm just being late.
That is true. You are perennially late, but you never tarry.
Right, okay. Okay, I'm not trying to tarry. I'm
got a lot going on.
I'm tardy, not tarry, okay? I'm tardy.
Not loitering. Let's just keep throwing out strange words.
Oh, look, we have just let's pause for a second.
It's kind of fun that we're actually sitting next to each other.
That's from Mark Pickles says hello from the UK. Hello,
Hi,
Mark. Keep up the good work. Keep up the articles. We love your stuff. Keep thinking. Keep doing. We can't wait to see you here in the land of Israel. And Erica is just excited because she says, "Wow, shalom together?" Question mark. Question mark. Question mark. Corona safe now. Nice to see you in the same room.
We are both fully vaccinated.
We are vaccinated. That's right.
That's right.
We are in Pfizered. We've
Yes, I actually have begun receiving the instructions directly from Bill Gates.
That's
in my brainstem.
That's right. I love you, 5G. I love you, 5G. I must kill the queen.
Right.
Okay,
So,
where's
zombies. Anyway,
in any case,
I feel a little giddy here.
that's right. Let's. Well, that's what happens. That's
So
when
people
they-
got out of hand. You get to that pinnacle, and
That's
it
right.
just gets out of hand.
Okay, so let's get back to it because we do have a time constraint, which is the nation saw that Moses was tarrying. No, was either late or tarrying to come down from the mountain. He's late. And this is a proof in the Torah of why being a yeki is dangerous. Okay?
I would have said it's a proof why being late is dangerous.
No. You see, he
They
wasn't
didn't
late.
actually expect
Right.
him to be on time. You know what that's called? Victim blaming. What are you so upset for? If you didn't expect me to be on time, everything would be
No,
okay.
if you were Hasidish, you would have been like, he's late. Let's have l'chaim. Let's have l'chaim.
They did actually, apparently, just not toward a good end.
Yeah. So in any case, so he's late. He's late at coming down and the word is really embarrassed. He's embarrassed. And the reason this is important, I think, again, we're not going to get into the depth of it, but the reason it's important is because it's like, oh, he's a holy man. Oh, he's got ultimate truth. He's up with God. We're not that holy. We're not that good. So he's up there. And we need stuff that's a little bit more, a little bit more earthy. And so exactly then, they're going to, they gathered, the nation gathered on Aaron. Very specific language. They bore down on him, right? Vayomru elav. And they said to him, Kum, get up. Aseh lanu Elohim asher yilchu lefaneinu. Make for us a God that's going to walk before us. Ki zeh Moshe ha'ish, because this Moses, the person, asher ha'elenu me'eretz Mitzrayim, who brought us out of Egypt, lo yadanu ma haya lo. We don't know what happened to him. So, first thing you see the power of Moses as this figure, and second thing is that they're like instead of being patient, instead of following Moses' way, they need something. They're lacking something, and they're going to turn to some kind of desirous element, which is not going to lead them in a good path.
I mean, you also see one of the fruits of kind of a, for lack of a better term, a structural problem in the whole process of redemption here, which is that Am Yisrael has been passive since the moment that Moshe showed up. They were slaves. They were used to doing labor as they were told. Slaves lack motivation almost by definition, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not really so simple to just take them out of that state of slavery and give them full agency, which is ultimately what we're after here. And so Moshe has been literally guiding them along like little children. Well, here, what happens to little children when they're in a passive mode and the thing that is giving them sort of support and guidance disappears? They need something else. Right, and to a certain degree, this is almost an inevitable result. I don't know how you would have avoided it, but it's a warning to us that that really what they wanted was something to make them feel safe. You notice that they're not looking for a replacement for God here; they're looking for a replacement for Moshe, which is a fundamentally different desire.
Right.
Which may be one of the reasons that the Rashi and the whole camp that he belongs to say that the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was a response to this failure.
Right.
It was God's recognition that they're not there yet.
Right. They need something.
They need something.
They're saying it.
Yeah.
And they may have gone too far, and people will die.
Oh yeah.
But there's some kind of impulse there, which is understandable.
It's a genuine human need to have some focus for worship. That's what the Rabbi Yehuda Levi says, that the problem here was that they took the reshut, the sort of authority unto themselves. Remember, in the end, God is going to place the Aron Nabrit, or the Ark of the Tabernacle, Ark of the Covenant, in the midst of the Mishkan, and it's got two golden cherubs on top of it.
Right.
It's not like golden statues are out here. Yeah. It's just, you don't go doing those things on your own.
And I heard an explanation about why they wanted a golden calf, and it has something to do with the Ma'aseh Merkava. And there's a lot of explanations that, in
first
fact,
turn to the left.
when they basically looked up to God, that's actually what they saw. They saw some kind of.
It's what they were able to perceive.
Right, they were able to perceive.
I remind you what I said before is that's the danger of the fact that everything we see in God is a projection from ourselves.
Right.
Because it's not always our best side.
That's right. That's right. Now Aaron, who is in many ways the diplomat the people lover, the one that me'aden.
He smooths the way. He softens.
He's the softener. And not in a fake way, but like in a way that, like, in a very real way, and actually a way that brings peace amongst people, the way that harsh truth maybe does not. Here in this case is caught by his own yearning to appease and find common ground, commonality. Does not say heck no. And according to the Midrash, he sees Hur killed. And he says,
for saying heck no.
And he says to himself, not that I don't want to be killed too. No. Rather, he says, if I get killed, this nation will not have any...
There's nobody here. Right. They will take the reins completely.
No, that's not how I understood it. I understood that if you kill Aaron as well, he says, then this nation will not have any kapara. It'll be done. That's it. That will have gone too far. That's too much. I mean, killing Hur was far enough.
Bad enough. Yeah.
In any case, so he kind of tries to delay them, and he says to them, why don't you give me all of your gold?
No, even better. He says, get the gold from your wife. Your wives and children.
That's right, from your wives and children.
Assuming that that's going to be a prolonged process.
Right, and they'd be like, what? I don't want to go for my golden calf. I want it in my ear. So but somehow they did manage to get him, and it says... They brought it to Aaron. In fact, he took it from them, and he made. How do you translate cheret? What is the?
Well, it's a bit of a. There's two meanings that Rashi brings. Cheret can be. It was like a kerchief or some kind of cloth that he just put all the gold in it, and he threw it in the fire, and out leapt this calf. The other thing is that cheret is one of the tools of engraving, right? That Aaron actually made this as like a mask.
Right, and the word mask is an interesting word because you have there's it's not spelled this way, but you have the word masecha here. But in this case, it means like molten
calf.
Molten calf. So what's a molten calf? It sounds like something from Ben and Jerry's. I'd like a molten calf. Can I have a molten calf?
It sounds like Starbucks.
So yeah, exactly. Like, give me a molten calf. Exactly.
We say it now. There's going to be a molten calf drink at Starbucks in the next year.
Well, it's funny you say that because I remember one day I lived in Manhattan for 7 years, and one day I was downtown in the financial district, and I'm walking along,
and you met the bull,
and I saw a huge, snarling golden bull. With by the way, all of his autonomous equipment with him, right?
Otherwise, he wouldn't be a bull,
right? But he was very much a bull, right?
He'd be a steer,
right? And like a bull there, and it's a golden bull, and it's got that angle, it's on the, it's charging. And I thought to my, first thing I looked up to God and I laughed out loud. I was like, ha 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 ha, because like you might read the Torah and be like, who would make a golden bull? Or you might go down to financial and be like, what?
Why is there a golden
bull? Why would you do that? But like you see that it is a human instinct. But my question is, you're sitting around the table like the one we're at, like a big
wooden table,
office table,
boardroom table,
and people are like, I think we should make a big golden bowl here. Okay, what do you guys think? Everybody's like, yes, yes.
And the one guy in the corner is like,
I
don't think this is going to end well.
Like a Jewish guy's like, I think.
Well, unfortunately, probably a lot of them were Jewish.
Right. Which is the guy who's like, I feel like it might be wrong.
There's something uncomfortable about that.
I think about that all the time. Right. Anyway, so they make this thing, and then to add insult to injury, vayomru. These are your gods, O Israel.
Yeah.
Which took you out of Egypt. That's like
that's a gut punch.
Yeah, right. It's one thing.
The ingratitude there is very raw.
Right. It's very, very raw. It's yeah. And Aaron is trying to slow things down, but he says to them, he sees this thing. And maybe he sees also Hur dead here, according to the Midrash on this pasuk. In any case, he says, "Okay, it's a holiday for God tomorrow. We'll get back here tomorrow."
Good work, people.
Yeah. Okay,
we're gonna meet up again in the morning.
Right, and in the meantime, all this is about is trying to slow things down
because Moshe is either tarrying or just simply late.
Right. V'yashkimu macharat. They woke up in the morning. Or in this, where the word mishkimu means they got up early. V'yalu olot, they made sacrifices. V'yikshu shlamim, offerings. V'yeshav am lechol, and they sat down to eat. V'shato v'yakumu letzachek, and they sat down to eat and drink. And they got up to
play.
Sport.
To sport.
A little closer to the mic.
A little closer, sorry.
Yeah, and we know what that means, and anybody who's got a sense for this text understands that we're talking about licentiousness. We have 10 more minutes.
Yeah,
okay, great.
I was just checking. Don't be nervous.
Okay, yeah. So then God turns to Moses, to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they're on the mountain. He says, "Go down, your nation." Ki shechet amcha, your nation.
Yeah, it's like when your wife says, "Your son just made a mess in the kitchen."
That's right. That's right. I usually say that to my wife, but okay.
Whatever.
Which you brought out of Egypt, right?
Which, I mean, beyond the sort of almost like husband-wife spat of who's responsible here with Moshe, there is a very important question which arises from this in the Midrash, which is that and Rashi brings it here that Moshe, on his own accord, accepted a large group that wasn't part of Am Yisrael, that came with them out of Egypt. Mm-hmm. And it's a theme you find in the Midrash that Moshe actually has a side of compassion, of a Rahman, right? Someone who really just kind of wants to open the door and to be merciful. And there's a few instances, particularly in the narrative of coming out of Egypt, where God says to him, I don't think that's going to end well. You know, one is this Erev Rav, this sort of mixed mass that came up with them that the guys now saying they're the ones that started this problem. They were like, came up with the idea and everybody got swept up in it. The other is interesting. There's this personality of Micha, we can't go into completely today, but you know, when Moshe saw the suffering that was happening in Egypt, and it says that Pharaoh actually used children as mortar between the bricks of the pyramids. Moshe wanted to save them, and God said, no, it's over. This is like kacha, you know, Allah b'machshavtai, like this is the way it's got to be. Moshe pulled one child out, and that one child, Micha, is the one who brought idolatry with him through the Red Sea. And then idolatry becomes what? The golden calf. That there's something, that Moshe has some finger in this process.
And it reminds one of Noach a little bit.
In what sense?
In that Noach escapes a world of that was destroyed, a world of evil. And yet when he comes out of it, he himself kind of turns.
He brings a little bit with him.
Right. Some aspect of the old world is with him.
That's because neither of them could really understand the human condition. Now, Noach was just depressed by it, and that's why he got drunk and fell on his face in the mud. And Moshe was to a certain degree above it, which is why it made him angry in the end of the day. To a certain degree, kept him out of Eretz Israel.
Mm-hmm. So Moses gets the bad info about what's going on. And
definitely bad news.
And
talk about your ultimate come down.
Right. And he turns immediately to God and he says, listen, this is going to be a PR disaster for you. You know, why do you want the Egyptians to say, oh, you took them out just to kill them in the mountains and to destroy them from the face of the earth? Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. Oh, taking out the Israel card, not just Yaakov. This is like
it's a full on.
Right, which is like your whole mission here. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, which you swore to them. You swore, and you promised them to make their seeds fruitful, like the stars in the heavens, and you were going to give them this land, and they're going to inherit it forever. You promised them that, and God here accepts that plea. But the anger is still very much there. Then Moses, after like having an emergency session, an intervention. It was an intervention. It was an intervention, yes. Right? It was mamash an intervention. He turns around and now he now is embodying that anger.
Yeah, he totally brings it. He brings it down on the people.
Right, and he walks down the mountain with these, and then the Torah is going to go to explain to us what are these 10 commandments. What are these 2 tablets that are written from both sides, and they're written in the finger of God. And it says v'haluchot, and the narrator of the Torah tells us v'haluchot maseh Elohim hema. These tablets are the work of the handiwork of God. V'michtav michtav Elohimu, and the writing is the writing of God. Charut al luchot, it's carved onto the tablets, and the rabbis say charut is also cherut. It's the thing of liberty. Liberty is coming down to this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's a powerful. So it's worth to just touch briefly that the idea that the luchot are themselves a source of liberation goes to the heart of what Sinai is all about, which is that as opposed to the licentiousness in the tzchok, right? That sense of playful freedom, I can do whatever I want, which the people thought was what was coming to them out of their worship. What you're getting here is a structure that actually guides you in life and truly sets you free. There's a very different models of divine service. One on top of the mountain, one down below.
Right. Yeah. And you know, partying is fun.
Oh, no question.
Right.
No question.
But holy, that's what I'm saying. Like partying with Aaron is something, and then the holiness is not always something you want to accept upon yourself. That's why they kind of like, we're like, he's up there with truth and we're down here with reality. There's even like stupid jokes about that. Like, I'd rather be, you know, partying in hell, something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
right,
all kinds of
part with this sinners in hell than with this.
All kinds of silly things like that. But the point is that I think you said it better. I think, which is that they weren't ready for it yet. They had not prepared themselves for a life of service. And they just did not have that tradition yet. In any case, Moses comes down. Oh boy, he comes down, and this is one of the most famous scenes in the whole Torah, which is he takes these two tablets and he breaks them at the foot of the mountain. Our rabbis say, "Yasher koach asher shibata," like, it's good you broke it. Well, good for you. Good, you know, that's right. And I heard Rabbi Echelon explain that, like, destruction, ironically, is actually the greatest show of ownership. Like, if you
if it's really yours. I mean, if it's not yours, you wouldn't really break it.
Right. So he says, like, I can break this, and we can rebuild it. And later on, we'll learn even that, and this is something that's so interesting to me. The broken tablets are not like discarded; they are also very valuable. They're very valuable, the broken tablets. Like, they are with us. They go with us in the Ark of the Covenant, right? We take the broken tablets with us.
I think it's one of the reasons, and one of the messages that I always take from that is never mistake the sort of written with the reality. Meaning, it's very important to have the luchot and understand that God has given us command and that there is an absolute expectation that we can fulfill them. At the same time, there's also a lived reality, which is, don't forget that how we got here was a historical process. It was organic. You weren't ready for the first ones. You broke. There are consequences. It doesn't change the truth that God revealed to us. It just changes the way that we're meant to relate to it.
Moses is going to now do, if he did an intervention before, now it's an investigation. What happened? What did you do? There's going to be a big reordering in the camp, you know?
A lot of people are going to die.
The Levites, right. A lot of people are going to die. The Levites are going to come out. They're going to take that violent tendency that we've learned about before, but now using it for holiness. There's going to be a drinking of the ground up golden calf, like a sota would drink it, and people that were sinful in the golden calf died as well. And then really the next big section, and I want to get to it because we have about 5 more minutes left, is that Moses is going to go back up to heaven. He's going to go back up to heaven, and he's going to hear, first thing, the really bad news that God says, all right, I'll fulfill the deal, but I just won't go myself. I won't go personally. I'll send an angel. I'll discharge my duty. I'll discharge the contract.
And also, it's painful that it's framed and it's for your own good. Because the reality is, you're a bunch of stiff-necked people, and if I go with you,
right,
I'm just going to get angry again.
That's right. And you'll go down.
Right. Although, I mean, I would say, having done a lot of work with men in particular on how to control their anger within their relationships as fathers, there's something very real in this stage of saying, if you have to choose between taking a step back and letting your rage out, step back. Right? And in this sense, there's some real modeling that happens. So God says to Moshe, listen, I'm going to fulfill, like you said, I'm going to do my duty. But the intimacy of relationship has been lost here.
Right. Yes. And that is exactly going to bring us to the next section, which is, at first blush, at this Torah portion, it should end here, which is like intimacy is lost. And
right.
if anything, this is the Torah portion of intimacy.
Well, but that's because the depth of relationship, which I alluded to before, is that if there's a vessel of commitment, if there's a real commitment to one another, then real breakdowns, I'm not talking about arguing over like who doesn't fold the cereal box up before they throw it out, but like real breakdowns over personality, over fundamental values lead to a deeper intimacy because they expose the places where we don't align, and they force us to come up with a new model. And that's exactly what happens. And
that's right.
What's fantastic is that, of course, God is committed to Am Yisrael. That wasn't in question here. What happens is that Moshe's commitment to Am Yisrael becomes so powerfully apparent. Right? And I think in many ways it's the commitment that Moshe shows here when he says, erase me from your book. If you can't find your way back to intimacy with Am Yisrael, erase me from your book. It's that which ultimately allows Am Yisrael to accept the Torah. Mm-hmm. Because the Torah is not easy. Anybody who thinks it is either doesn't understand what it is or I don't know what, right? It's not easy. And ultimately the people accept it from Moshe, even though they know God's behind it. And why are they able to accept it from him? Because Moshe has shown his absolute commitment, not just to their relationship with God, but to their survival and well-being.
Mm-hmm. But he's going to demand of God also more. He's going to say, you know what, God? Now that we've had this big problem, the Jewish people went off the rails and all that, you know what? I need you to show me the whole thing.
Yeah.
I want you to...
Although I don't see it as a demand. I see as Moshe, this is a revelation to Moshe, that when he realizes that what he thought he was going to do was try to fix things, and what he's actually done is strengthen the relationship, right. He leaps, like, show me your glory. Oh my goodness, I didn't know. To me, it's one of the most powerful, passionate statements in the entire Torah.
That's right. It's if you want to see it for yourself, chapter 33, verse 18, Vayomer hareini na et kvodecha. Show me your glory, or show me your full glory. And then there's going to be this, I would say, very intimate dance between God and Moses about what amount of revelation God can show him. And then the famous scene that God says, I'm going to put you in the cleft of the cliff, and I'm going to cover my hand. And when I pass by you, I am going to call on the name of God, and then I'm going to remove my hand, and you'll see the back of me. What does it all mean? You know what I mean? What does it all mean? Very tricky stuff. At the same time, we're going to have the very kind of this worldly material request of God, demand that Moses remakes the Ten Commandments. This time, the Moses version of the Ten Commandments, the second Ten Commandments, the more earthly ones, shall we say?
And the symbolism, I think, is powerful and quite clear. Is that the luchot, the original tablets, were above the people. They were even above Moshe. Moshe was able to receive them because he was Moshe. This one comes from below. It's driven by the desire. Right. And one of the beauties that happens here is that, according to the rabbinic chronology, the day in which Moshe brings back the second commandments is Yom Kippur, right? The Day of Atonement. Right? The day when we all do tshuva, we return to God. And what we see is that real tshuva is coming to want for ourselves what God wanted for us all along. Because what God gives us the second time is no different than what we gave the first. It's just we were ready to receive it because now we actually wanted it.
But there is one difference, though, and that we're going to get a new set of the same commandments that we heard in Mishpatim. You're going to go into the land of Israel. Do not make any deals with the settlers, with the people of the land. Destroy them. Destroy their high places. Follow the 3 festival holidays. Come up to the holy place. And follow the commandments of those 3 holidays, including, Pesach with the chametz and the bikurim and all that. But all that is now going to be framed within, be careful, because I see now that you have a weakness to follow idolatry.
Yeah.
So the language has changed a little bit to be like, you got to stay away from them because you got a problem. You obviously have a tendency towards idolatry. I want you to stay away from that. Let's finish up right now. We have just another minute, which is the very end of the Torah portion. There's so much stuff here, but the very end of the Torah portion is that Moses is going to come down after 40 days and 40 nights where he didn't eat bread and he didn't drink water, and he's going to write the new 10 Commandments. And when he came down, this is chapter 34, verse 29. When he came down from Har Sinai, when Moses with the two tablets came down, guess what? He didn't know. Ki karan or panav, that the skin of his face was glowing, was radiating, right? Exactly. Was radiating from the word ray. There's a ray coming out. Bedabro ito, when God spoke to him, they got so close that his skin started to radiate. And when he came down, guess what? The Jewish people, even Aaron, was scared to get near to him, and he called them. He called out to them, what a romantic image, come to me. And they came to him, and then the rest of the people came to him, and guess what? From that day on, verse 33, Vayichal Moshe midaber itam, when he finished speaking to them, Vayiten al panav masveh. Wow. Moses became so much more like God. He became kind of hidden. He put a veil on his face, and only when he would teach them Torah, he would take off the veil. They would see the Torah with the full facial
force,
life,
right.
full force. And then when he would finish speaking, he would, to become more like them, he would have to put like a curtain over his face.
I mean, there's a powerful message for us in this. I mean, there's many, but one is that, there's this verse, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Mishle, but it might be Kohelet, which is Chachmat Adam Ta'ir Panav, right? That a person's wisdom lights their face, which is often sort of associated here. But beyond the sort of general fact that, like you can see it in his face, he's a smart guy, is that Moshe reached the point where he was able to allow his inner experience to actually transform his reality. Mm-hmm. He went beyond the simple knowledge acquisition or moral corrections. Literally what God gave him transformed him, and he held out to Am Yisrael. And this is really what we're striving for now. I feel like in our generation, perhaps more than ever, is to let what we know really transform who we are.
Amen. That's right.
Right, and it's a huge challenge because there's a lot of our backstory that people are struggling with. We were slaves. What do you mean? Let this? I'm who I was yesterday. Yes, but you could also be who you will be tomorrow, and that only happens if you let the experiences you have and the revelations which God gives you really transform who you are.
Amen. Transform who you are. And I'll say what you just said just in my way, which is you could still see Moses' glowing face. It's actually in the words of the Torah, because that's where it was transferred to.
That's right.
And if you allow yourself to see it, it really will glow at you, and you will be like, wow. And then you will get that. If you allow yourself, like Rav Mike just said, it will glow back out of you to other people. Maybe the whole world will be lit up.
That'd be
Rav Mike
Feuer,
amen. Rav Mike Feuer, thank you so much for letting me join you here at Pardes. I want everybody to check out your other podcast at jewishstory.co, the Jewish History Podcast, the Jewish Story, jewishstory.co, and also your spiritual counseling at ravmike.com.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, it's a great way to connect with you and with me. Just write me an email, yishaifleischer.com. Check out yishaifleischer.com for all the other stuff that I'm doing, and also, of course, our parent network, which is the Land of Israel Network, thelandofisrael.com. More great stuff on the podcast and here on the Yishai Fleischer Show. Thank you so much for being part of it, and awesome Shabbat Shalom. One last thing, make this Torah portion like a celebration at home. Learn it with the kids. Go crazy. This is the big stuff, okay? This is the stuff where and the light shines out of this Torah portion as well, and you can pass it on. God bless you. Let's just say shalom to Chaim Davies, who says to us, whoa, is this the first virtual meeting in a year?
Non-virtual.
That's right, non-virtual. That's right. And Simone says, as always, an interesting and informative talk. Love the passion you both have. Thank you both very much. God bless you. And our good friend Erica says, Todah for another deep knowledge about the Torah portion, about the Parsha. God bless you, folks, wherever you are. Stay tuned, stay strong, stay connected. More great stuff is on the way. And shalom. All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleischer Show. I want to thank Rav Mike Feuer for joining me. And I also want to thank our wonderful sponsors, JewishPress.com, one of the premier news websites and blogs and issues and podcasts about Israel. Every single day they have a great email called Jewish Express, JewishPress.com. Lots of info, lots of good stuff, always on top of the issues. Check out JewishPress.com. And, of course, the place where I have the great honor and privilege of working, the Jewish community of Hebron. We need strengthening, and we, in turn, will strengthen the tomb of the fathers and mothers, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. And you can join us by going to hebronfund.org, hebronfund.org. It's really about the strength of Israel in the very root of Israel. And I want to thank our good friends at Prohibition Pickle. Everybody's talking about Prohibition Pickle because it's great pickles, great salami, great Ashkenazi delights for your Shabbos Kiddush. People all over Gush Etzion are rolling over to Prohibition Pickle. Check out Prohibition Pickle. Visit the store or go online to Instagram or to Facebook. And, of course, you can, even if you're outside of the land of Israel, you can order for some of your favorite people. It makes all the difference in the world to get a great Shabbos Kiddush. I also want to talk about one of our new sponsors, which is Energy CX. It's a business to help other businesses. They help businesses meet their energy needs and sustainability goals in all 50 United States. Synagogues, schools, businesses, retail, industrial. If you flip on a light switch, they can help you with a new form of kosher energy. If you want to lower your electric or gas bill or just use better energy or more kosher energy, check out Energy CX, energycx.com. And I'm very proud that they've joined our program. And, of course, Tchelet. Tchelet, Tekhelet, Tchelet.com is where you get the true blue Jew string. If you go to Tchelet, don't forget to type in coupon code Yishai and get, I think, 5% off at Tchelet. That makes a big difference. It's a high-ticket item. It's a bit expensive, but it's totally worth it. It's something you get like twice a year, and you will get rid of all of your blues when you're walking around with the Tchelet blue. So that was just some of our sponsors. We'll talk more in the next break. Right now, Simcha Rothman is an amazing advocate and running for Knesset, and I have him on the show in order to meet the candidate. Let's talk to Simcha. Shalom and welcome to the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting live from Judea to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. So we finished Purim. It was awesome, right? We're getting ready for Pesach, but we're getting ready for another aspect of post-Purim, which is the awesome fourth elections in the last 2 years. And on March 23rd, indeed, the Jewish people in Israel, and actually all the citizens of Israel, Jews and non-Jews alike, are going to be voting for the 24th Knesset. And there's a lot of interesting parties and changes from the previous voting patterns that may be taking place this year. We have an interesting new party, which is called the Religious Zionist Party. Now, the Religious Zionist Party is a nationalistic party, so-called right-wing here in Israel. And they have a candidate who's the Anglo candidate, if you will. He's not actually an Anglo, but he just speaks English really well, and his name is Advocate Simcha Rothman. He has an illustrious history in his young life. He's the founder and legal advisor for the movement of governability and democracy. And we have one word for that in Hebrew. It's called Meshilut. Meshilut, it's like hold on to the reins and drive this thing in a real way. He's a leading voice in the fight against judicial activism and for proper separations of powers in Israel. And I think that it is not coincidental that we're interviewing Advocate Simcha today, since today is the day we're going to get to this, which is the Supreme Court's big decision that Reform conservative conversions must be accepted by the State of Israel to give citizenship to those who have converted here in Israel through Reform conservative conversions. Simcha deals with complex relations between appointed and elected officials, and represents Meshilut in appeals files before the Israeli Supreme Court and various Knesset members. He's got degrees from Northwestern University and Tel Aviv University and Bar Ilan University. He learned at the yeshiva Keren B'Yavna and also served as a chaplain in the combat engineering corps of the Israel Defense Forces. It is my pleasure to welcome, let's see how I get this right, exit solo, and let him in, Advocate Simcha Rothman. Thanks so much for joining us today on the show.
Hi, shalom, shalom. Thank you for having me.
It's really fun to have you, and let's get for people to get to know who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? How many kids you have? And how is it that you learned English so well?
Okay, so I live in Gush Etzion. I live in Pnei Kedem in southeast Gush Etzion. We see the Dead Sea, Yam HaMelach, from my window. Baruch Hashem, very, very, very good place to live. You really feel, and it's a small one. It's what you call the new settlements. It's a small settlement. We're just now in the path to get all the approvals on the place. My wife Hannah will speak about her later because she's one of the connections that I have with Aliyah and Olim. She was born, of course, in Israel, but her parents came and made right after the wedding and made Aliyah. And she's from Neve Aliza. I am originally from Bnei Brak, and I have 5 children. And I, you said what I did in the past 8 years with Meshilut and the legal work, and now I am happy that I joined Tzionut Datit, the Religious Zionist Party, with Bezalel Smotrich. I think we have a very diverse list of people from all areas of political and legal and social and economical work. Many good people that are working already 24. I would say 24/6, but it's actually 24/7 for everything that Tzionut Datit stands for everything that right-wing ideology in Israel stands for.
Right. The word right wing is not always makes sense. Doesn't always make sense across the seas. People don't understand. We're talking about nationalism. We're talking about Jewish nationalism. We're talking about moving the state of Israel forward on proper tracks. One of the things that you've been doing is trying to disentangle, create a kind of separation of powers, disentangle some of the, old ways that the government of Israel has been operating, the bureaucracy. Let's talk a little bit about something that is all over the news today and is so important to the Jewish people at large. That is the question of Reform conservative conversions. Now, the state of Israel, as I understand it, has already for a long time accepted Reform conservative conversions from well-known communities to accept them as citizens of the state of Israel, to fall under the law of return. But the change now is also for conversions done in Israel under the Reform conservative banner. And this could affect a lot of the migrants or workers that are here in Israel and other people who want to potentially get, a kind of lighter, easier form of conversion, get through it, and then merit to have the option to become citizens of the state of Israel. So here you are. You're now in a position of potentially being a Knesset member in the upcoming elections. What do you think about this law? What do you think about the Supreme Court's decision, I would say?
The Supreme Court decision. That's exactly the problem. Legislation might be a better way to deal with this issue. And some would say it's the fault of the Knesset because the Knesset did not legislate this issue for 15 years. That's the claim of the court. It's actually not really true because the Knesset cannot legislate. And that's a major issue we're trying to solve with what you spoke before about the separation of powers in Israel. If we would be able to legislate something that the Knesset will agree on, and we will know this is the solution, that's what will stay, there would be easy ways to legislate, and there would be even ways for trial and error. You would say, okay, we try something, it didn't work, let's change the legislation. Once the Supreme Court basically has a veto on all legislation in Israel, in a way without any basis, but the ideas, the politics, the people in the Supreme Court applying their own views on the state of Israel. So once you legislate something that they don't like, they cancel it. And once you do legislate something that they do like, they won't let you legislate anything else, and they will say, oh, you can't do that. So this creates a problem for legislation to solve this problem. But let's talk about the real...
Right, that's macro, right? That's a macro of what's called...
Let's talk about the real issue.
Just to say one word here, that's an activist court, right? And Israel is famous for having one of the most activist court in Western legal type systems. And that's one of the things that you've been fighting against. But all right, let's talk a little bit about the specific of this issue.
The issue itself. It's not a secret. The majority of the Jewish communities and people outside of Israel are not Orthodox Jews, Reform, conservative, all kinds. Some of them non-affiliated at all, but that's not a question now we're talking about. The majority that identifies themselves as Jews are Reform conservatives. Israel connection with those Jews, even though personally, of course, I think it's a mistake. I think it's not the right way to live life according to Judaism. But the connection with them is important, even if we don't agree. It's very important to have a connection with those people. They are Jews, they are our brothers, and we want the connection with them. Therefore, Israel, you can say it's a little bit problematic, but we understand what you get. If someone converted in a community in the US, for example, to a Reform community, lived there for a few years, became part of the community, and then he says, oh, I feel myself so good as the part of the Jewish people. I want to make Aliyah. I want to come to Israel. Because his community there recognize him as Jew, we will say, okay, in Israel it wouldn't work. That was the case until now. But if you recognize him as Jews, because of the connection we want with you, we will accept him also as an Oleh, as a Jew. Of course, it creates a lot of problems. How the marriage in Israel will work, what will happen. It creates problems, but we're willing to accept this problem for the sake of the connection between the different parts of the Jewish people. What's happening now, and it's a problem, and the legislation did not take care of that, but we know the problem. It's very limited in size, and it didn't happen so much in the past. It's a more symbolic kind of thing. Now we're talking about having this happen in Israel. In Israel, the incentive for someone who is here and is not Jewish to become Jew and stay here legally is very strong. The incentive if he wants to do it, just take, for example, someone who comes from the Filipinos, and he wants to come to, and he's in Israel, is a foreign worker in Israel, and he wants to stay in Israel. If he wants to become an Israeli citizen because he met someone, fell in love with someone, doesn't matter, he has to go through a lengthy process. It doesn't go easy for him. Now you're giving him a very easy way without any commitment, real commitment, and it will be very hard to define because there are not really communities, established communities, large numbers of communities that are reform or conservative in Israel. There are only very few, and you are giving a big incentive for those people to just say, okay, instead of going through the lengthy process of becoming an Israeli citizen, we will call ourselves Jews. We will join a congregation in a reform. It doesn't require us to do Brit Milah. It doesn't require us to observe any parts of the mitzvot. It doesn't require us anything. We just want to say, okay, that's what we want to be, and we will become Jews. So it's a very grave danger, and I wouldn't say it myself. One of the judges in the decision that supported the decision said that this is a grave danger to the state of Israel. That's his words, not mine. So it's a grave danger. The court did it. The court stepped in a place he shouldn't have. The fact that he's waiting for 15 years, I'm not impressed. Sorry, but I'm not impressed. The rights of Jews to daven on the Temple Mount, the right of Jews to go there free and do and worship. That's a right that is in the basic law of Israel. There is a basic law saying that the right of any member of any religion to go to his sacred place and exercise his religion will not be interfered. And the court, time and again, when people came and says we want to go on Temple Mount and do tefillah and daven there, the court says, no, you can't do that, and I'm not gonna enforce the law on the government because I understand it's very delicate and there are problems. So the court understands that on delicate and important issues, he knows how to step back because he understands the dangers. Here the court says, okay, I'm going to step in and I will make the danger that I see the danger, and I don't care that I create a danger by my own ruling. And we are, we're committed to solve both issues, both the issue of judicial activism at large and also the issue of conversion in Israel, to make sure that only state-recognized conversions, recognized by, of course, by the authorities in Israel, which are by the Rabbanut and by the Orthodox Halacha, only this will be recognized in Israel. That's part of our promise to our voters, and basically to the Jewish people. It's not only to our voters. Our voters will be affected less by this issue than the regular person in Israel. Is not very strongly connected to a specific community, doesn't want to check lists, different lists, who the person is going to marry or his children going to marry. Is he really Jew? Can he marry? So here's the one. This person that is not really very. Is not ultra orthodox. Is not even observant. But he does want himself and his children to marry Jews and not to have this kind of problems in Israel.
You know, I just want to remind people that the sages kind of say that during the time of King David, when Israel was, again, a kind of very powerful and attractive country, they shut down at that time conversion because people were coming in for the wrong reasons. People weren't converting because they wanted to get close to the God of Israel. They were converting because they wanted to live in an economically strong country. And that's what's happening again today. And yet this decision by the court kind of opens it up much, much further. And I guess I would like to also ask, I had a little tweet war with somebody on Twitter, and he was saying to me, like, you guys are disgusting because you don't want to give citizenship to this. He actually mentioned a Filipino worker who's been here for 15 years, like you mentioned. And I just asked him, like, why does this Filipino worker need necessarily Israeli citizenship, which means voting in Israel and then accepting a kind of this reduced form of Judaism, which there's no oversight whether the person means it. Why can't we just talk about residency? If somebody wants residency here in Israel, maybe we can find some kind of status for residency. But why necessarily go all the way to citizenship to accept him as a Jew and to accept him as a citizen? Why can't there be a more developed residency package?
So there is a residency package, but people don't want it. People want to be full citizens. There are some differences, not a lot, but there are some differences. But there are residency. But also, Israel immigration policy. Israel was established on the promise to be the homeland of the Jewish people. We have people that are non-Jews in Israel, but we want to make sure that Israel will stay the homeland of the Jewish people. There is the basic law saying that, but in order to make sure that the laws, the public sphere of Israel and the culture in Israel will remain hospitable, that the Jews will feel here that's their home. You need to keep and observe the Jewish majority in Israel. And the Jewish majority in Israel in the past few years has declined. We are losing numbers because people don't know that. But most of the people that came to Israel in the past year through the law of return, I'm not talking about illegal infiltrators, don't count them in. I'm not talking about tourists who overextend their visas. I'm talking about people that came here under the law of return. Most of them are not Jews, no, they're not identified themselves as Jews. We are also promising to change that. But it's not that they're not, I'm not talking about they're not halachically Jews. I'm talking about they don't have any connections. They don't even want to become Jews, some of them do want. And the only connections they have to Judaism is that one of their grandparents was Jew. And even though some of them are Christians, and they are coming here, they can get the Aliyah package because and this is a misuse of the system that the Jewish people built in order to make Israel the safe haven and the place for every Jew around the world. And we're using it for other reasons that I don't understand why. So we need to change that. My beloved family member of mine, Matthew Rosen, who's also a great lawyer, writes, he says, LOL, laughing, like there's throngs of people dying to do Reform Jewish conversion just to slip through Israeli immigration laws. A huge bunch of BS and a non-issue, except to create fear for political reasons against non-observant Jews. So Matt says, this is really a non-issue. Why are you making it in such a big issue? That's what he's asking. Okay, it's a non-issue. That's why the number 4 in the Avodah list, Rabbi Gilad Karev, a reform rabbi, of course, and that applied to the Supreme Court, he says it's a big deal. He says it's a big development. Apparently, he wants also to frighten some non-observant Jews. In Israel, observant and non-observant Jews are Orthodox Jews. Even the non-observant, it doesn't have anything to do with observance. The majority of the people of Israel circumcise their children. In order to become a Reformed Jew, the conversion, you don't have to circumcise. In Israel, the most of the people of Israel observe Pesach in the Orthodox way. Most of them, 80-90%. It doesn't mean if you don't have to be observant. No one observes all the mitzvot except maybe the greatest rabbis. I'm talking about there are levels of observance in Israel, and even the secular Jews in Israel, many of them keep kosher. Many of them, definitely most of them, do not want their children to marry a non-Jew. Those issues that when you look at Reform communities in the U.S., some Reform communities does not say anything against intermarriage. Maybe they don't encourage it, but it's not a problem. This kind of issues. So the Israeli, even the non-observant, and I have to say, I got during the past 24 hours, it was maybe even about 24 hours, more responses to this ruling from non-observant Jews, from secular Jews, who were very worried about this issue. That they said they again, as I said, it's more of a problem for the non-observant Jew in Israel than to the observant Jew in Israel, and that's why it's. I'm sorry that this guy thinks like that, but it's a real problem and needs a real solution.
Right. This guy happens to be a good friend and a family member, but I want to say that I think Advocate Simcha, what is very important to understand is around the world, there are tons of people, hundreds of thousands of people who try to come in yearly to become citizens of the state of Israel. People are coming from African countries where they're trying to migrate. So you have the whole South Tel Aviv is full of African migrants. Russian non-Jews who come on the back of the Russian Jewish Aliyah movement, which my parents were part of, but a huge amount of non-Jews that want to come and get citizenship here and live here because they're coming to a country that's healthier, better off economically, etc. So I think coming from a perspective of an American Jew and saying, "Oh, who wants to come to Israel as a Reformed Jew?" That is I think a little bit seeing it from a very small angle of an American Jew. The truth of the matter is, in the globe where people are having low standards of living, people that have a chance to get a different opportunity. Look at all the Arab migration into Europe. And the African migration, Arab migration into Europe, it's similar. There's a yearning to come to the Jewish state. It's seen as a very good place to live in. All right, let's go on to a different topic. Simcha, you've been presenting yourself like Dov Lipman did when he ran for Knesset and was a Knesset member, as kind of your congressman in Knesset. We don't have geographic representation here in Israel, and so you can't go to your congressman. And my good friend. My good friend Gidon says, when you write to a Knesset member, he doesn't write you back like they do from the staff of a congressman. They say to you, "Oh, you say, I'm from your district. I need help with this." So the congressman or his staff writes you back pretty quickly, and you get your representative is really your representative. Here in Israel, a lot of times we elect somebody because they have similar opinions to ours. But once they get elected, you never hear from them again because they're not actually beholden to a certain geographic constituency. So within that, you've tried to be kind of your congressman in Knesset, and we'll see. Maybe you'll get elected. But what are some of the issues that you see that Anglos, right, English speakers from the various countries English-speaking countries that live here in Israel, what do you think are some of the issues that they're facing, and how do you propose to solve them?
Okay, so first, a little bit about my background. I promised in the beginning why I feel that Anglos and Olim in general, but Anglo Olim even more, are yes, they are my constituency. First, my family made Aliyah not so long ago from the U.S. In 1910, about 111 years ago. So I'm Oleh Hadash. But really, once an Oleh, always an Oleh, and especially when you're coming from an English-speaking country. Again, my English is not from there. You can hear my accent. I have an Israeli accent. I can't fool anyone. But my family were always, some of them, my cousins made Aliyah, came back from the U.S., Canada, Australia. My family is scattered. Is all over the globe, but and also when I got married, my wife's family from Chicago, and they live in the Ve'aliza in Ginot Shomron, an English-speaking community. And I feel that this group is really underrepresented in the Knesset at all, but also in the Israeli public because, and I think mostly it's because of the language barrier. They read different newspapers. They hear different newscasts. Some of them, even today, when it's easier, so many of them get the news from the US or from the UK. They don't even watch Israeli TV because of the language barrier, and then some of them watch Facebook pages like yours, but some of them are not, and sometimes they feel themselves more connected. And I see it with family. They see themselves more connected to Jews living in New York than to their neighbors across the street. And the language barrier has a lot to do with it. And I think I can help if you listen to, I can make conversation in English, and that's already break one major barrier when you're trying to solve this issue. Also, personally, my children and my wife are American citizens. I file taxes on both sides of the ocean. Not for myself. I'm an Israeli citizen and only Israeli citizen. But I know how is it to what kind of bureaucracy someone who wants to play by the rules in Israel and in the U.S. and has to face opening a new business in Israel when you're a dual citizen might be a big problem. It can be solved. You need to take care of it with in the Knesset.
Like what? Like what are you talking about? What kind of problem can you run into?
When you're today, we're in Israel. If you want to start a new business and you are an American citizen and you either open a firm, a company, and then you pay a lot of expenses for opening company for accountants and stuff. But if you want to operate as a small business and not open a company in Israel, then you have to pay almost double, even triple the amount of taxes, because you pay double Social Security and you get none of the benefits or almost none of the benefits of paying Social Security. You don't get the health care, but you pay for the health care on both sides of the ocean. For example, and there are all kind of those things can be solved in a higher level politics and negotiation between Israel and the U.S. But someone needs to address this issue. Someone needs to put it on the table and press on this issue. That's just one small example. There are other issues. People are preventing themselves from being in Israel for too long because of the tax issues. That's more of a problem for high income families. But the first problem was more for low income families problems. And of course, the bureaucracy, people coming, they're not used to the system. The system in Israel is very different. And a lot of the part of the issue of where are the most people coming in the Aliyah from the law of return, a lot of the focus on the Aliyah, on the absorption ministry is focused on Russian immigration, on Ethiopian immigration, or other kind, and the for the large communities that speak English, you have Nefesh B'Nefesh, which is a volunteer organization. They get some, but it's actually came from the bottom up. It wasn't until Nefesh B'Nefesh started working very seriously. The Ministry of Absorption almost did not know what to do with the people coming from the US or the UK or from Australia. So you need to have someone who's those issues are close to him, you understand the language, and wants to solve the issues. And again, Bezalel Smotrich is my teacher in politics and my mentor. And I think that he's the best example of how to have a congressman, even in a system that you don't have congressmen. Because when he was in the Ministry of Transportation, he was the minister and people, when the bus came late, people sent him a WhatsApp, and he solved this issue. He is available for the public in ways. I hope I will be available as half like Bezalel Smotrich and still be like miles ahead of most Knesset members and ministers in Israel. But that's the case.
Very good. Okay, so I just want to say that my friend Chaim Davies, who owns a small business that is one of the sponsors of our show called Prohibition Pickle, that has a beautiful store now.
Amazing! I have to stop you. Amazing store. I recommend. I go there every Friday. Sadly, on Purim it was closed, but I go there every Friday. Go there. It's amazing.
Right. That's right. Prohibition Pickle at Summit Gush, the Gush Junction. It's really fun. So he writes, Chaim says, as a small business owner in Israel, it's a huge concern. Double taxation, shocked that it's still a thing. So let's work on that. And I have another question coming up from Noah Joseph, but I want to wait on his question. Okay, good. And if you, by the way, Simcha, I think that Chaim will obviously get you, a gratitude, special pickles that you like if you work on this.
No, I can't accept gifts. I'm, the police is after us.
That's right. Okay, good point. Let's get to an issue that is not specific to Anglos in Eretz Yisrael at all. It's actually Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. Look, in my job as the spokesman for the Jewish community of Hebron, I am seeing how the Palestinian Authority is just building and taking land nonstop, and we're really losing chunks of the land of Israel. I'm not even talking about areas A and B, which sadly our state has given over control to the Palestinian Authority. I'm talking about area C, and I'm talking about, for example, in Hebron, building in such a way as to crush the small Jewish community of Hebron in order to stop it from building. And out the window here in Gush Etzion, and my friends who are really hardcore landholder honors here in Gush Etzion and other places, we're seeing a wholesale land takeover. This is part of what's called the Fayad plan, in which really the Palestinian Authority is working on two heads. One head is delegitimization, and the other head is a quiet land takeover. Not terrorism, not planning bombings, just slowly but surely capturing land. Now, you started an organization called Meshilut, but we all know of a famous organization called Regavim, which tracks these efforts of the Palestinian Authority to take away land, but it's not being stopped. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu, as my wife said, one day his face is going to be on the money, because he's done so many great things for the Jewish people. But when it comes to land theft in Judea and Samaria and the land theft in the Negev and in the Galil and the Golan as well, and the Galil especially as well, we are seeing really what we call ozlat yad, like a weakness of the state of Israel. How is your party, which is slated, in a good case scenario, to be, not one of the huge parties in the Knesset, how is it going to change? I know that you guys are the Eretz Yisrael party. We're so concerned about this issue. How are you going to tackle this already institutionalized land theft?
Okay, so of course, as you mentioned, we have the Eretz Yisrael party, and you are from Hebron, so you know that when you visit Hebron, you can't miss Orit Struk, number 5 in our list, who is basically when you talk about Eretz Yisrael and you talk about Judea and Samaria, you talk about Orit Struk. She is the head of the Eretz Yisrael lobby in the Knesset for many years.
The caucus, Eretz Yisrael caucus, yeah. Right?
Yes, different terms around the parliamentarian world, and she was and pushed forward many important decisions and laws regarding Eretz Yisrael. But it's a real problem, I think the same way I told you about the justice system, the same way about Eretz Yisrael. If you know what you want and you have a plan, the Likud and Netanyahu, you can pull them to the right. They really, a lot of my friends are in the Likud. I appreciate most of them, and the people that I don't appreciate in the Likud, most of them already left the Likud for various reasons. And there are people, very good people, but they need to have a strong ideological party to pull them to do the right thing that they believe that that's the right thing, but it's focused on ideology. So it's about the justice system. It's one thing. About Eretz Yisrael, the same thing. Bezalel Smotrich was the one who is initiative to have Chok HaSdara, the settlement law, that to create the people that went and bought houses from the state of Israel in Judea and Samaria, paid mortgages, got themselves all the approvals, and then for some reason their houses were declared, we have some problem with the land, and they're left without anything, and you need to solve this issue. And he pushed forward this legislation, and all the Likud followed suit. It's okay, and it passed in majority of 61 Knesset members. Not a problem. But you need to have someone who knows what to do, have to plan. As you mentioned, Regavim is a Bezalel Smotrich organization. He started it. He's the founding father of those fights about the land of Israel. He knows what to do. But specifically about Area C, we already have a draft of a government decision that will give the right tools and budget to the army, who is in the control of the land, and to the municipalities, to everyone, to fight this land takeover in Area C. And this is already set. And of course, because we are a land today governed by the Attorney General and the political instability, Gantz, the minister of the defense minister, and he was also the justice minister at the time, prevented it from passing. And he said, I can't do it. You can't do it. It's election time. Excuse. It was an excuse, but doesn't matter. We have a system that we didn't have a right-wing government, or any government for that matter, in the past 2 years. We have to have 100% right. I know you said right-wing means different things across the ocean, but we're in Israel. Right-wing in Israel means one thing: a Jewish state. Is that what it means? In Israel, it doesn't mean anything else. If you are for a Jewish state, for the state of Israel to remain the homeland of the Jewish people, that's the right wing in Israel. And for some strange reason, and a dangerous reason, some other parties who have good people in them, they transfer votes from the right to the left in Israel. And you're voting for them, and they say, according to all the polls, we were going to have 80 Knesset members, 80. The Knesset will be formed of 80 Knesset members that are, if you ask them personally, they will tell you, I am committed for the right-wing values of Israel, to the state of Israel being Jewish, to reform the justice system, to allow settlements, then to allow the settlements to thrive and to fight Area C land takeover. They will tell you all that. They would even say we're opposing a Palestinian state, and most of them, and then they say, okay, yeah, but we hate Netanyahu. That's why we're going to form a government with the Reform Rabbi number 4 in Avodah, or with Yair Lapid, with the left-wing parties in Israel, and they will let them basically veto any change in the foreseen future. So that's a real danger in the next election. And the parties that are saying so, they're saying we are not willing to commit to a right-wing coalition, to a right-wing government. Gideon Sa'ar, who says, I will never sit with Netanyahu. Bennett says, I will be the prime minister, and I'm not saying that I'm going with the right, and I'm willing to do this with the Avodah and Yesh Atid. That's a real danger, that the right, you will vote right and you will get left. And that's something that we can't allow.
All right, so just to remind people, Israel has 120 Knesset members. In order to rule, it has many parties, and in order to rule, you need to make a coalition. In Israel, the Likud will get at best, let's say 33, 34 seats. It has to make a coalition with other parties, nationalist parties, if it wants to have a nationalist government. And today, it's not so simple. So let's talk politics for a second. I think most of my listeners want to talk about issues and want to talk about what's important, what's right. But in Israel, it's not just about what's important, what's right, but how it works. And so, okay, you're talking about, Bennett may, at least according to his statements, may be willing to go with let's call it a centrist government. But at the end, you need Bennett probably, because you're gonna, let's say people want to vote for National Religious Party, which is the Religious Zionist Party, Religious Zionism, which is the letter Tet. That's how you vote this in this coming election. That's the call sign for your party. Okay, you can expect, best case scenario, 5-6 seats. Wow, that's great. But you still need a government. And that government, as far as I understand what you're thinking about, it's a Likud-led government. That Likud government, according to the math, is close. It's very close to form that. And it's not going to get all those 80 so-called right-wing or nationalists.
That's the problem.
Right.
That's the problem.
Okay, so how do you? Okay, so I've got a lot of my friends are Likud voters, are Bennett voters. They're excited about religious Zionism, but give us a forecast about how we can expect. Oh, and another thing is, voting for your party is like, in some ways, voting for Netanyahu. It's like voting for a coalition with Netanyahu, but keeping him more right. Give us a kind of scenario about how people should understand what potentially a coalition could look like.
Okay, so we can talk about it in a second, but I have to emphasize, voting for us is voting for a right-wing government. The fact that Netanyahu is the prime minister, if the election in Israel, it's not like the election in the US. We are not voting for a president by itself. We're voting for the Knesset. So if the vote is about Netanyahu, yes or no, Netanyahu won all past 3 elections. No one replaced him. He's the prime minister, right? But we have a left-wing government with the prime minister, Netanyahu. Today we have this kind of a strange government where Gantz and other parties, Avodah and other parties, were part of the coalition, and not only they were part of the coalition, they had a veto on any decision. So you couldn't pass any right-wing decision, even though Netanyahu was the prime minister. So and Bezalel Smotrich was not in this coalition because he cannot sit in a coalition that is not right-wing. It is commitment to himself. It is commitment to his voters.
Well, and also the party that he was in, which was the Yamina party, decided to sit it out. It was Bennett's decision.
I have to remind you that the list that he was part of was compiled of 3 different parties, and he could have done what other member of this list do and split. He chose not to do it. And other member, Rav Rafi Peretz, he split and joined. But that's besides the point. That's so the fact that Netanyahu is the prime minister does not guarantee a right-wing coalition. You need to have a right-wing coalition, and the parties that we're talking about, hopefully, of course, Bennett is welcome, and we want him to be, and we urge him to declare that he will only form a right-wing coalition. I really hope he will make this declaration. Until now, he failed to do so, but. If we talk about coalition of Netanyahu Netanyahu party, the Likud, and the ultra-Orthodox parties, Shas and Gimel, and we're talking about the religious Zionism party, and we're talking about Bennett's party, and you get to the magic number 61, you can have a right-wing coalition that all its members are committed to reform the justice system, and all its members are committed to settlements in Judea and Samaria, and all is into the Jewish state and to Jewish education and to solve this giyur, this conversion issue. You can do it, but because one part of the 5 pieces puzzle that I just mentioned says, I will not, don't count me in. I might not join this coalition. I might go and form a different coalition when I will be a prime minister, and I will invite to my coalition Avodah and Yesh Atid, the left-wing parties, because he wants to be a prime minister. So I think it's a mistake. We just think it's a big problem. But yes, you can actually see and feel it's very close to have a right-wing government. And I hope also Gideon Sa'ar will make the right choice and forget about this. I don't want Netanyahu in any cost. I will never sit under Netanyahu promise he made. I really hope he will do it.
But don't forget when you say that you don't want to sit with Netanyahu, you get a lot of voters who come out from the blue and white party and from those places who really voted for a change of the prime minister. They say Prime Minister Netanyahu, he may have had a lot of successes, but he sat here too long. It's even in America they have term limits. It's time to change horses here, and so that's where they're banking on.
Anyway, and if you can do it by forming a right-wing government, no problem. Or it's that we mentioned before. No one will question her ideology. She just said it today. If it's a right-wing government, no problem. But there is no right-wing government. We remember how it was in 2013 to 2015 when Yair Lapid was part of the government. It was not a right-wing government, although it was the majority in the government was right-wing, but the minority in the government basically blocked and pushed forward. Blocked any right-wing policy and pushed forward left-wing policy. That's the way, because with the help of the court and the justice system.
Simcha, we are talking with Simcha Rothman, who is he's an advocate and the founder of the Meshilut governance organization, which fights against government bureaucracy and for separation of powers, checks and balances. And by the way, in a conversation that I had with him one time, I had a conversation with you, I by mistake said separation of shul and state, or church and state, and you jumped at me and said, well, definitely not separation of synagogue and state. That's not what you mean. You mean separation of powers, but not that other American ideal. Why did you get so animated when I said that by mistake?
Because Israel, unlike the U.S., is a nation state based on the Jewish people, and you can't separate religion from the Jewish people. The Jewish people and its religion are one. Not, as I said before in the beginning, not everyone observe every part of the religion. Not everyone abide to every rule of the halacha. But you can't separate the religion, the Jewish religion, from the Jewish people, and that's why you can't separate the Jewish religion from the Jewish state. If you don't want the Jewish state, the very sure path to do so is to say, oh, we won't have any recognition or connection to the Jewish religion of the Jewish state.
All right, speaking of the Jewish religion, and we're starting to wind down here, but there are questions coming in, and I'd like to urge all the folks watching right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope to write in a comment and a question, and I'll be sure to do my best to get that to Advocate Simcha Rothman. And also, folks listening on podcast, please write me an email, yishai@yishaifleisher.com. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you're excited about for the Knesset. Let me think who you're talk to me. Don't be embarrassed to tell me who you're thinking about voting for, or if you lived in the land of Israel, who you would be voting for. Would love to hear from you. So that's yishai@yishaifleisher.com. And let us see a question by my good friend Noah Joseph, who writes, tuning in for the first time in a long time. Great show so far. Yishai, question. What is Simcha and Religious Zionist Party's position on the Rabbanut's monopoly on state religious issues, even within Orthodoxy? Why should national religious rabbanim, rabbis from the national religious stream, not be running the national religious institutions? The Rabbanut.
Okay, so the Rabbanut issue is very complicated because you need to have. First, you want to have a one state-recognized synagogue, for that matter, that everyone can live with, because otherwise you didn't do anything. You have you will have people, everyone having their own lists, who they can marry, who they cannot, where they can eat, and also on kashrut issues. If the army in Israel keeps kosher, you need the kosher standard for the army be one standard that's recognized by the people that you want to join the army. If the standard of kosher will be privatized as a general rule, then which one of the companies will get to give kosher stamp to the army, and what will you do with the people who does not abide by this kosher stamp? So you will say, oh, don't come to the army. It doesn't work like that. It's an issue that it's really might be hard for people who are not living in Israel to understand, but in Israel there are some issues. So marriage and conversion and kashrut, which are the main issues that we're talking about, and needs to be supervised by the government.
Right, but that's a good introduction. That's a good general introduction. But like Noah's asking specifically about the issue that when you go today to divorce court, to the Rabbanut divorce courts or family courts, and many of the things dealing with the Rabbanut, especially getting married, it's always the ultra orthodox that are there.
Okay, and so of course, we want to change that. Of course, the Religious Zionism Party have a lot of reforms needs to be done by this in those institutions, and for just some people would think it's the other way around, but when you have the secular parties deal with those issues, they are more willing to give in to the ultra-Orthodox than the Zionist religious party, because they don't really understand the issues sometimes. Why would they pick a fight with their coalition partners on an issue that they don't have a real interest in? Sadly, I think they should have interest, but the fact of the matter is they're not. So the only way to really fight on those issues and bring in the religious Zionist point of view into effect, into the Rabbanut, and on Shemitah issues. We're nearing the Shemitah year.
The seventh year sabbatical, the sabbatical issues of not eating certain products during the seventh year. Mm-hmm.
Not eating, and how do you grow produce in the land, and on Shabbat issues, and on, as you said, as the divorce courts and rabbinical courts, all those issues. The only way to change is to give the power not to the secular parties who don't really care about those issues or either want to destroy those institutions or whatsoever. By giving the power to the religious Zionist party, we can get better dayanim in. We can change and we can change the system much better than voting to a secular party that wants to destroy the system.
Mm-hmm. And this is, I just want to make it clear that when we're talking about different streams in Judaism, the ultra-Orthodox are a coalition partner and also a life partner of the religious Zionist world, and it's important to understand that. Although pet peeve for myself personally is one of the things that drives me crazy, speaking of the Rabbanut, is the sign when you go up to the Temple Mount to pray in Judaism's holiest place, that it says that the Rabbanut has decided that it is against Torah law to go up to the Temple Mount. That is one of the painful Rabbanut decisions. Simcha Rothman, I want to thank you so much. I'll give you kind of 1 minute, 60 seconds for any last comments that you want to address people with. And then let's wrap it up. Okay,
so thank you very much for having me. I really want to be in touch with people who are listening to this, or maybe in podcast, and maybe afterwards in podcast, but also on the live view. Feel free. I really want to be available for you. My Facebook page is open for messages. Also, I can get phone calls. I get everything, but I want to be available for you. I want to hear what are the problems needs to be addressed, and I think that we're waited for so long to have a government, a right-wing government, to deal with those issues. We need to have the chance. Vote right. Vote right. Make the right choice and vote for the religious Zionist party. Our ticket is Tet. Thank you.
My friend Josh Wanderer writes, wanted to see if Simcha can read lips. So that's yeah, and my mom says, you have no sound, but we have sound now. But at the same time, we got sound back. And Awet Vicky Petro says, thank you, great show, and shalom. Advocate Simcha Rothman, you are the founder of the Meshilut movement, which works to lessen the Israeli bureaucracy, to create checks and balances like a good government is supposed to have, but at the same time, a government that is maybe democratic, but is part of a Jewish state on the land of Israel. You are running in the Religious Zionist Party. Call sign is Tet, and the vote is March 24th. And that's going to be for which Knesset? It's going to be for Israel's 24th Knesset. And B'ezrat Hashem, it should be a good one. Advocate Simcha Rothman, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks. So that was really fun to have Simcha Rothman with us. And you are listening to the Yishai Fleisher Show. Lots more interest in Israeli politics. I don't even like the word politics. I prefer the word leadership. We are working to make the Jewish state stronger and better, an awesome country here in the Middle East, and a power to be a light unto the nations as well. Lots of work to do, and that's the exciting thing, to be part of the process. People like Simcha and many other great leaders are working hard to make our country better. You're a part of it wherever you are. Send me an email, yishai@yishaifleisher.com. From all over the world, and certainly from the land of Israel. We're happy to connect you to Simcha and other potential Knesset members or Knesset members as well. Lots of love and lots of blessings from the land of blessings, and shalom. All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleisher Show. I want to thank all the folks that make the show happen. If it's Moshe Herman or Tabitha or my man, Ben Bresky, Yocheved, making sure that it's getting out even further by pushing the show out, and Lou helping produce the show. A lot of folks make the show happen, and it's really a wonderful team, and I'm honored that I have such a great team with me to make the show widely available to you. I also want to thank some more of our sponsors, including Aleph Mail. If you have facial hair, and that's great. You keep you warm in the winter, keep you scholarly in the summer. You know that you want to make sure that that facial hair looks good, smells good, feels good. Check out Aleph Mail, some Judean non-toxic masculinity. It's organic, it's on your face, and it's awesome. Aleph Mail, put in the coupon code Yishai10, get 10% off. And also, Salves of Jerusalem. Salves of Jerusalem make your face glow like Moses, right? You get the Mo Glow at Salves of Jerusalem, salvesofjerusalem.com. Get the myrrh on your face from the biblical heartland. It's amazing, and our good friends Simcha and Rachel make it happen. Salves of Jerusalem. Of course, type in coupon code Yishai, bang, 10% off. You're rocking it. And finally, our brand new sponsor, which is Silk Salon and Day Spa in Israel's beautiful Judean mountains in Gush Etzion. It's an amazing beauty center, spa and beauty center, and you can trust their experienced staff to provide high-end beauty services, including skilled haircuts, hair coloring, manicures, pedicures, facials, bridal packages, and of course also bat mitzvah packages like Leah enjoyed. It's a place that Jamie Geller called Heaven on Earth, and it's really fun, and you can also give it as a gift. That's silksalon.co.il. Make Judea beautiful. That's what I say, silksalon.co.il. All right, so now let's get to the final segment of our show. It's with Matt Mausner. You'll see he's both an author and a thinker and a historian and a podcaster. He just came back from China, and he's got a lot to say about the Middle Kingdom. Let's hear from Matt Mausner. All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleisher Show, and I'm on the street in Yerushalayim, and I'm with a friend here, and we stopped at a little spot where it's like surrounded by construction, and I just gave thumbs up to a guy building a building. He's standing on the third floor, and there's a lot of construction noise, and I'm like, this is a perfect spot to stop. Actually, my friend Matthew, he found it, but then I was like, this is a perfect spot. I literally am seeing 3 buildings going up right now. There's one, there's another one, and there's a big hole over here that they're digging in order to make a building, and this is an awesome feeling, the feeling of Yerushalayim being built in our time. It's just beautiful. It's sunny, 60 degrees, and just a fabulous day here to be in Eretz Yisrael with you. I am actually here with my buddy Matthew Mausner, who's a historian, an entrepreneur, an author of a book called That Word. That word does not mean what I do not think it means what you think it means. That's what it is. And also a podcast by that very name, That Word, which is at thatword.org. Matthew is a fabulous person and a smart person. He actually just spent over a year in China. And that's what and he came back finally to Yerushalayim, so we missed you very much. but I wanted to get his perspectives on the world, but especially first on China. Matthew, thank you so much for spending time with me in the great outdoors here in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, as it's being built.
Amen. No, it's really great to be back. I was like the most Zionist of the Zionists, and I used to give people a hard time for making Yeridah under any circumstances. And then I had an opportunity to do a startup, and it brought me down into America, and then eventually to South America, and then to China. And it was an incredible opportunity to, raise up sparks and see the way the world is and see the way Am Yisrael is perceived in the rest of the world. And at this very unique sort of moment in time, to be in China was like just so eye-opening. You want to talk about building. I mean, we used to joke there, we'd be like at lunch, and then they'd like move in with cones on part of the courtyard, and we were going to be like, oh, there's going to be a 40-story skyscraper there by tomorrow. And there would be. I saw them build a super highway that went like 30 kilometers, like within like a week and a half. Like, they have more high-speed rails there than the rest of the world put together. They're 20 years ahead of America. You wouldn't believe it. America's falling apart. You go back and visit the Long Island Railroad is 3 hours delayed. The New York City subway doesn't even work. Texas, the entire power thing falls apart. California, my friends are leaving California because the taxes and the disasters. And you go to China, it works. It's like, it's clean. It's 1,000 things you've heard about China. Maybe they were true. They're not true anymore. They've got more rich people there than we've got people in like all of America. Like, you wouldn't believe it unless you see it. Now, there's a downside to it. There's dark sides to it. But I feel like people who want to just dismiss it with one word and say, oh, well, they're just China. Oh, well, I don't care what they accomplished because it's meaningless to me because they're communists, or because they're too many of them, or because they're, and they just dismiss the whole thing out of hand. I feel like that attitude, if America had had that attitude in the 50s, they'd have been like, well, the Russians made Sputnik go to space, but they're communists, so we don't need a space program. Well, that would be ridiculous, right? The rest of the world is falling behind China in all these ways, and I feel like we're sort of blind to it. We live in China, right? Like, look at your clothes, look at your phone or your computer, look at your sunglasses, anything you have in your house, 80% odds it was made in China. They're generating all the wealth, they're building everything. I was there, I met all these old school China expats, and they're losing their jobs there. They're being forced to train their Chinese replacement. The Japanese, the Koreans. So
you're talking about so-called white people from outside of China. It could be Jews, it could be anybody else from different countries that came in as like factory managers or doctors or innovators. They've taught a generation of Chinese people to build stuff, and now they're basically being forced out and being replaced. You told me even some kind of number about Japanese and Jews in Shanghai.
Yeah, the Gubei neighborhood of Shanghai is where the Jewish community there has a couple shuls, and it used to be the Japanese quarter of Shanghai. And apparently the number of Japanese has dropped by like 80 or 90%. Koreans, same thing. Jews, Israelis, used to be a lot more there, and increasingly it's been harder to get your work visa, keep your work visa. If you're an engineer, a businessman, whatever, they expect you to now train your replacement. You can still be involved financially, you inspect a factory, but like, they do their own thing more and more and more, and they're rising up as this like very, very aggressive, self-important, self-esteem. Like, they know that they're the next great world power, and they see the weakness of the West. They see the way that America is tearing itself apart with this two-sided craziness. They see the way that Europe.
Do they only see it, or are they? Some would say that they're part in fomenting it, right? There is that school of thought that says that, for example, I'm not here stating my opinion, I'm just kind of airing it out. Some people say the whole coronavirus was a kind of, virus or a computer type virus sent into the world ether and turning the world upside down, also causing a lot of divisiveness, certainly caused Trump and likely had a big effect on Trump losing the presidency. I'm just saying, like, if you hear some people speak about what you're talking about, it's not so much in glowing terms, but in empire-type terms, in a hunger and a thirst to control the world. And these are people that are also masters, and I want you to talk about this also, which is that they're masters of surveillance and public surveillance. And so these people gather information, they surveil, and so I guess the big question that I'm going to boil it down to with all these small parts, which is like, what's your take on the motivations? Like, are we dealing with, and I'm going to break it down to simple terms, good folks, bad folks, and then let's get to the Israel question after that.
Well, to the first part of your question, it's gam vegam. I don't think they created coronavirus. There was a lot of talk about it from December to the beginning of February. Nobody in the rest of the world was even talking about it. But in China, it was a big deal. And the government lost a lot of face about it because they didn't control it at the beginning. They kind of covered it up. It was a big crisis for them internally because they really, really count on their population being on their side. And their population does, by and large, trust them. They know that there's a bunch of propaganda. There's hardcore repression under the surface, but it's mostly in the past. Most people, you know what the deal is and you stay out of trouble and you make a lot of business, you have opportunities. There's no reason to be a revolutionary, It's an interesting admixture of communism and freedom that you're talking about, or at least understood rules. So it's not like suppression per se. The average person does not feel suppressed, right? He knows not to say certain things or talk about certain things, but he also has freedom to advance, and there's a meritocracy there. 100%. They're doing communism better than we are in the West, despite the best efforts of those, socialist parties that run Denmark and whatever. They're doing communism better. They really are raising up people's standards of living, building amazing infrastructure, taking care of people, giving people jobs, and they're doing capitalism better. They're growing so much wealth. They're building so many companies. The only part they don't really do is innovate. They take our ideas, our amazing security cameras that Silicon Valley or Israel invents, and then they implement them better.
Why is that? Is that because of the way that they study, or is that some kind of more innate, less creative outlook? Or is it a cultural thing? And we don't have to get into the big question of nature nurture. Just saying, what's the issue there? Why is it that they're really are they do they have a culture of intellectual property thievery, or is it that just they're more math oriented and therefore kind of more given to doing the things that are taught to them and follow it?
For sure, up until recently, they would just take they had no respect for intellectual property. It was almost like it wasn't a category for them. It was like, oh, here's a thing. I can use it. I can make a business out of it. I'll manufacture it. Supposedly, they're getting better on that. They're trying to normalize with the rest of the world because they want business. They want the business world to integrate, and you need to protect intellectual property to work with people. But the bigger thing they're doing is they really have a border. Outside the border, it's the world. There's chaos. There's good things, bad things. But like capitalism, the way it works in America or whatever the corruption problems are in the West, capitalism also works by chaos. You come up with a big idea. Despite the best efforts of the old school companies that pay off politicians, a really good idea has at least a chance of just destroying a whole industry, right? In China, they decide holistically, and I'm not saying holistically like some new age person, but like their mantra is stability of our society. So they say, we like this whole kind of like WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever, but we don't want that to come in and have the ability to just decide what we see and we don't see. Like you just saw.
We want to decide the ability to see to show what we see.
So they built their own clones of all the major social media, and they have their own internal ecosystem that they decide. So there's never going to be a chance where the social media company would have the autonomy to decide, you know what, we don't want the premier to talk.
Right.
Like President Xi, he's not letting WeChat is their biggest platform, right? WeChat is not in a position to tell President Xi to shut up. Like, that's insane. And they looked at America and they laughed. They were like, are you kidding? You have such weak institutions. You can't even control your own company. You can't do it. Now, I'm not saying defending either way, but right.
Now, let's get back to the question that I asked. Maybe I should just define it a little tighter, which is, okay, you spent a year there, you learned a lot about it, you were an entrepreneur there, now you're back in Israel. It's clear that they're hungry.
Oh, yeah.
But the question is it the kind of hungry that I've got to, think about, creating an army against? Or is it the kind of hungry that I got to figure out how to work with these guys?
Well, we as Israel I think we have a chance to work with them. They have a lot of respect for us, and we have kind of this unique, like, middle position. And you're seeing that in our orientation towards the Emirates and stuff like that. And, you know, when America is in the state that it's in, which is a very problematic moment in time, and I'm not saying America can't rebound, but America's definitely in decline. America strategically, it's manufacturing, all these things, moved to China, moved to out of America. And you saw when Corona hit, regardless of how it began and how it initially spread, the Chinese for sure realized that they could, because they have the system they have, they could handle it better. They withheld for several weeks shipments to the rest of the world of gowns, of masks, of medicines. Most of the world's medicine is produced in China. Like, to make yourself, as the rest of the world, that vulnerable to China. So I wouldn't trust them. I have friends in Hong Kong who are, you know, now scared to open their mouths because their freedom just got taken away. Just a couple months ago, China took advantage of Corona to be like, you know what? We're just squashing this Hong Kong thing. Technically, they were supposed to have freedom for another 25, 27 years, till 2047. It's supposed to be a full transition. Nope, over. Boom. A lot of people went to jail. A lot of people got disappeared. Put it this way. We need to have our acts together if we're not going to be dominated by China and the whole next generation.
So you're saying work with them, but be wary of them, know how to keep them at bay, and now how to keep your autonomy from them. You also said something to me earlier, which was very interesting, and that is that you said that we Jews have some kind of system, and you're developing this theory about how we Jews have some kind of system to deal with great powers and also the transition between great powers. And we're just about to have the Purim holiday, which is really an ode to Persian power, but also that's the period of transition between Babylonian and Persian power. The Jews are caught, and at the same time the Jews are yearning to go back to the land of Israel, or not yearning enough to go back to the land of Israel. But it was definitely a struggle for power, and how the Jews get through that power in order to continue to do their thing, to do our thing. Tell me a little bit about, like, the Jewish survival or thrival technique vis-a-vis great powers.
Oh, I like thrival technique. That's a great line. Yeah, Jews are the world's only tribal wisdom tradition that specifically evolved in the context of slavery, in the context of trying to survive between giant empires. We have this sort of unique origin story of, like, Abraham is from the greatest civilization was Kasdim, like the Sumerians, and then it becomes the Hittites and the Babylonians, and then the Egyptians, and we escape them, but then we have to deal with the Assyrians invade us, and the Babylonians, and the Medians, and the Chaldeans, and then the Persians, and we get the Purim story. We have a wisdom tradition built on knowing that we're small, and we're next to these huge empires that are probably going to try to conquer us and maybe succeed. We're never going to be big enough, strong enough militarily to fight the giant empires of the world, and somehow we're always between them. We're always on that sort of, like, cutting edge. The Soviet Empire, the German Empire, and then and they have this relationship to us. We're this tiny little tribal people in this one, like, little range of hills and this little corner of the Mediterranean, yet somehow we become important to the German Empire. We become important to the American Empire. We became important to the Ottoman Empire, to, you name it. So now we've got the Chinese rising up and America kind of coming down. If you're American, you probably need to start preparing to fight China, because you're losing. And you don't even know that you're fighting a battle, and you're not planning long term, and you're fighting each other instead of being worried about your place in the world. But if you're Israel, we have a wisdom tradition to say, you know what, it's not going to be our battle necessarily. The Chinese respect us. And we respect the Chinese on a family level, on a values level, the way they do school, the way they take their children and push them right through to make sure they're going to overachieve, very, very similar. The patterns of Chinese getting into the top universities in America is almost exactly like Jews 30, 40, 50 years ago. They're the ones who are destroying the curve now. They're the ones who value that. And we do too, and they look up to us, and they look down on the weakness of the West, and they look down on the...
So when they saw you there, they kind of saw you as a white man. You told me that a police officer can easily call you a white monkey to your face. but then when they identify you as Jewish, that puts you in a different category?
Definitely. I think that they are, like, we had big debates kind of inside some of the Jews and entrepreneurs and educators, like, they would pay a lot of money for just a class on how Jews think. How do Jews think? And we have a debate inside ourselves. How much do we teach the non-Jews about our real wisdom? Not just like an external kind of version, but like the real deal.
It's the debate that is really how we think.
Right. So that's, up to a point. They're totally into like having serious debates about what society is and should be and how to do it. Other things are off the table, and I respect that. I don't necessarily respect their choices about which things are off the table. For them, it's Hong Kong and Tibet and Xinjiang, which is that northwest part of China where the Muslims live and are probably being treated really badly, although we can't get journalists in there, so who even knows? And Taiwan, which is, independent but very scared to continue to be independent. So, they are throwing their weight around. They're building their own colonial Chinese cities in Cambodia and Malaysia. They're taking over, and they're doing this Belt and Road project. They're building their own empire.
Right, and just to bring it closer home to Israel, there was an article written about, I think it was by Michael Duran, my friend, who wrote about the Belt and Road having to do with the Middle East and Pakistan being a very important ally to China, and Djibouti, where they have already a naval base there, which is really in the Red Sea. And so they're definitely looking to make inroads here. And famously, Secretary of State of the United States, Mike Pompeo, flew over here and had a secret talk with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And what was understood that meeting was really about is, don't let China take over here in Israel. Don't let them man your ports. Don't let them build your ports. Don't let them make your infrastructure. And that's what was the request. And it seemed like, I think immediately subsequent, a certain contract for building a desalination plant went not to a Chinese but to an Israeli company, which I think is a good thing. But America is very concerned that Israel will go Chinese, will go towards that alliance. But in Israel, I'm not sure that the average person in the street is worried about a Chinese takeover. They're more like, I don't know. This is definitely oriented towards the United States country, but it's moving more oriented towards now here in the Middle Eastward. Yeah. And my friend Alex Trayman said to me, I've said this before on the show, he said to me that maybe Trump's last gift to Israel was look to the east because we're kind of done. Yeah. That was Alex's formulation. But like, are they going to try to swallow us, or are they going to try to cooperate with us? Should we push away and not cooperate with them at all? Or should we say, okay, there's ways that we can cooperate, but we're going to be wary. We're not going to give you our information, and we're going to certainly be cautious about intellectual property theft.
We have to be careful. I do think that, I heard that Chinese investors were trying to buy up like the Haifa port facility and things like that. There's certain things like we saw with the gowns and stuff with the corona crisis. You need to make sure you have your own critical pieces of infrastructure in your own control. And the Chinese definitely have the ambition to throw their money and their weight around, and we need to work with them in a way that we maintain our autonomy. I do think that there's space for us to be friendly with them, and the challenge there is going to be, and we've already seen this happen, when we sell technology to the Chinese, does it cross the lines that America wanted us to share with them? I think China is getting pretty modernized as far as their military and everything. I don't think they need a whole lot more of our help, and I don't think we're giving them all that much more help. We're an American ally when it comes down to it on the military level, but we do need to know where we stand with them. We need to be a lot more conscious of how important that relationship is. My friend Carice Witt, who is I know through the Yale Club of Israel, she created an organization called Signal, which has created, I think, 9 or 11 Israel studies programs at Chinese universities. And she brings Israeli professors over there to guest lecture, creating a curriculum for them to understand what Israel is on a political level, not like a how Jews think level, but more like on the professional and startup nation kind of stuff. That's the kind of initiative we need to really get ourselves educated that this is the next great empire. You know what I mean? It took us like decades of being in Persia before we figured out the danger, before we figured out the whatever. We've been in America for a couple hundred years, and some people realized, like, no matter how great America has been for individual Jews and economically for Jews, there's a real danger of assimilation if you're going to try to stay the corporate body of Jews, of the nation of Jews. If being an American is important to you, great, be an American. America works in a way that it doesn't really tolerate people maintaining their separate identity. And that's a great thing for what America is. But for Jew to be, a Jew in our homeland to Israel, then you should probably consider moving here.
Very interesting, and I think that's why we're having this conversation. I don't know, those last conclusions, those are far-reaching conclusions. But Matthew Mausner, you're a person who really seeing the world in a broad outlook. You've been around the world in a million different places. Just came back from China. And we're sitting today, all that knocking noise, which could be bothersome to some, to us is the sound of Geula, of redemption. Every one of those knocks that you hear in the background means that Jerusalem is being built. The Jewish people are returning to Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. And as you said, we have a wisdom tradition of dealing with great empires, and great empires come and go. And they do their thing, and they bring their magic to the world. And I think that another aspect of that is that we have actually a beautiful thing that we do as Jews. Not only do we survive and thrive along empires, but we also, when they go down, we also remember the best part of them. And the worst part of them, and we keep it as part of our tradition. So we're coming up to Purim. We're going to remember Persia. Who else remembers Persia? We remember Persia. When Saddam Hussein was calling himself Nebuchadnezzar, who else cared about that? We're like, oh yeah, that's what you think. I got you. Yep. So we have that ability. Matt, I want people to check out your work. You're an entrepreneur, an author, a historian. You got a podcast at The Word. Thatword.org. Yes. That word stands for?
I do not think that word means what you think it means. We wrote a book it's called A Shorthand Book of Misunderstanding. All the words that people are arguing about today, if you don't even agree on what the meaning of the words is, you're going to have a hard time arguing about everything else. So whether that word is democracy or freedom or man or woman, if you don't even agree on what the word means, you're going to have a hard time having a conversation. And that's where you see a real breakdown. We're seeing that in America. You're seeing that in a lot of the West. I think Israel has dodged some of that because we're so used to arguing that we haven't quite lost the thread of what the words mean. But my co-author Shimon Greenspan and I put that book together and published it late last year, and we do a regular podcast about once a week, most recently about the GameStop crisis and stuff like that, the stock market crisis and the sort of opportunities there. I'm so thrilled to be back in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, and to be bringing the experiences I had, bringing the sparks that I saw outside of the land, which I never wanted to leave, and bring them back here.
All right, folks, that was Matt Mausner, and we are in Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. It's sunny, it's beautiful. There are women pushing baby carriages. There are buildings going up, and we're living in an amazing time, and you're a part of it wherever you are. Stay tuned. More great stuff is on the way on the Yishai Fleisher Show. All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleisher Show. It's been a long show, and I love so much that you're with me. I hope you were able to stick around for all the great stuff that we've had. And I'd love to hear from you. I put in a lot of effort for this podcast. I'd love to hear what you think, how you see the things, what your thoughts about are the issues, or about your feelings about Israel, or the Torah, or the Jewish people, the God of Israel. If you're plugged in, let me know how you're plugged in. I want to see a hashtag from you, hashtag plugged in, or hashtag unplugged it. I'm plugged in, and that will really cheer me up and make me so happy, because when we're broadcasting to you, I want you guys to broadcast back. Let's be like Moses' face, when we shine our face out, and the Jewish people shine our face back in. Let's be out there shining our face back into the land of Israel, and the world will shine through that. Again, I want to thank all the folks that make this show happen, and sending you lots of love. Write me an email, yishai@yishaifleisher.com, or yishai@thelandofisrael.com. Thank you to the Land of Israel for hosting our network, and thank you to the God of Israel who's given us the strength to make it all happen. God bless you wherever you are, and shalom.
Prayer, faith, and healing. Find out about it from a Judean perspective.
We want this life to be good. It's so good. Cherish every day. Thank you, God, for every day.
The Land of Israel Fellowship invites you to learn Torah from Judea, a new cycle, a new world, with Jeremy Gimpel and Ari Abramowitz.
And if you don't see life as one incredible gift, you won't see God. But if you can see the gift, then you'll be blessed to see the giver.
To sign up, visit thelandofisrael.com/fellowship.